don't know. It wasn't ringing for some reason. Don't fail me now, technology. Polls open, I believe, at 7 a.m. Maybe, yes, 7 to 8, I believe.
Okay, we're on. Can you hear him, Robert?
Go ahead. Hello? Go ahead, General Spalding.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you so much for joining us at the bright and early hour of 5 a.m. We really appreciate it.
Happy to be on.
So, Carlos, would you like to start?
So, our guest right now is, and let me just put up his Twitter. The general is General Spalding is an Air Force general that is an expert on China, and there we go. Screen share. Can you see it, Rob?
Yep, we're good. Good.
Okay. So we put up your Twitter account on our screen share on Zoom, General. And he wrote a book called Stealth War. And he is a former senior director of strategy at the NSC and was a United States Air Force B-2 stealth pilot and a self-described libertarian. General Spalding, S-P-A-L-D-I-N-G. Welcome to the show. I guess our first experience with the general for Robert and I is that we were at Doug McClinko's July 4th or July event, Rally at the Rock, and we met the general there, and he spoke about China and the tools that they were using and using G5 and all these other tools to be able to subvert American policy. And because of that, and because today is election day, we wanted the general to come on and give us a very strong... Oh, and Todd Bartley's on, but unfortunately, I don't know if I can get him on.
No, it's fine. He's on Zoom, but yeah.
Okay. So anyway, we'd love to have you, General, talk about China. And I guess that the entree would be if you could encapsulate in about 5 minutes what you told us in your speech at the Rally at the Rock.
Well, thank you for having me on. I think what I tried to convey is that I spent 27 years in the military. The Air Force trained me to drop bombs, and the way that the United States conducts policy, particularly with regard to conflict, is to use military power to force a resolution to a political problem. And this is not the way the Chinese Communist Party behaves. They have a completely different way of pursuing their national interests, and that involves influence. It involves incentivization, and it mostly encapsulates the elites of our institutions in the United States. So we're an open country. We believe in openness and transparency. We have institutions, political, academic, scientific, government. All of those institutions become vessels for Chinese Communist Party influence through financial incentivization. So, one of the things that's heavily in the news right now is Hunter Biden. But when we think of, political malfeasance when it comes to corruption, we think of pay to play or quid pro quo. This is not the way the Chinese Communist Party behaves. what they try to do is to create relationships that create this shared vision of the world. So what they're trying to do is get you to adopt their vision. And in many ways, what happened after the end of the Cold War, in particular as they became part of the international order and were welcomed into the World Trade Organization in 2001, was that their worldview aligned very much with the American elite's worldview. And the more American elites became financially rewarded by working with the Chinese Communist Party, the more the two worldviews came together. Now, the way that the Chinese Communist Party's social contract works with the people of China, and I don't call them citizens because the Chinese Communist Party doesn't view the Chinese people as citizens. They view them as subjects. The social contract with the people for the Chinese Communist Party is that they will bring them jobs, and that in return for bringing them jobs, that they will not question the Chinese Communist Party's totalitarian rule over China. And they rule over China for their own benefit. The rulers of the Chinese Communist Party are all billionaires, many times over, and they own properties here in the United States and around the world. And so the way that they bring jobs to China to maintain their rule over the Chinese people is to take jobs from other countries. Now, I didn't understand this. I lived in China for 2 years, from 2002 to 2004, with my family as a young major in the Air Force. I studied at Tongji University, traveled the country. I spoke Chinese because the Air Force sent me to the Defense Language Institute. And it was a really great place, and the people were fantastic, but I had no concept of the Chinese Communist Party. And it wasn't until I got to the Pentagon in 2014, and I had a team. I led a team as a colonel that were entirely focused on China, that I really began to understand what the Chinese Communist Party was doing. And so we started looking back then at our industrial base, how we manufactured the things that the Department of Defense used to defend the country. And what I found was that many, if not most, of the things that we relied on for the Department of Defense were being made in China. And so I began to question what the implications were for our national security of relying on the Chinese Communist Party for all of this equipment and supplies. And of course, the deeper we dug, the more realization dawned on us that the Chinese Communist Party not only had taken our industrial base, not only had taken, America's manufacturing, but while that was going on, they were slowly insinuating themselves into nearly every aspect of our society, so that no matter where you went, no matter what government agency or department, no matter what national university in the United States, no matter what national lab, no matter what institution you went in the United States, they were there. And then not only in the United States, but looking around the world to our allies and partners, they were there in their institutions as well. And then not only that, but in the international institutions like the United Nations and the World Health Organization and the World Trade Organization. They had slowly created this, alternative mechanism for getting the things that they wanted out, the way we considered, pursuing national interests in the United States. And so, I became very alarmed that, we no longer could actually reach U.S. national interests just by, all of this money that we were spending in the Pentagon to buy aircraft carriers and, B-2 bombers and nuclear submarines, that, in fact, our institutions had been so taken over through these relationships with Chinese Communist Party officials that we could no longer guarantee the sovereignty and independence of the United States. In fact, decisions were being made at the highest levels to forego U.S. national interests on behalf of Chinese Communist Party prerogative. In fact, I would have conversations with U.S. diplomats, with U.S. policymakers, where they would essentially forego our own national interests because they were concerned about angering the Chinese Communist Party. And so this is the experience I had that led to me being hired in 2017 to be the senior director for strategy in the first year of the Trump administration, and led to the current national security strategy. And that strategy is really designed to break the back of Chinese Communist Party influence, not only in America, but in our democratic allies and partners and international institutions. And so we've been now engaged in 3 years, 3 long, hard-fought years in diplomatic circles, fighting with our allies and partners to get them to recognize the danger that comes through this influence that's going on. And they're finally starting to wake up. And the way that you know that they're finally starting to wake up is, primarily in this campaign with Huawei, because the whole idea of the Chinese Communist Party is to not only gain financial control over the world, but also control over the sources of information and to be able to use that information to further influence not just elites, but increasingly, and you see this in social media and the media, the populations at large.
Can you explain I was going to say, can you explain to us, we talked also about the idea of 5G at the rally. Can you explain how the theft of individuals' data, to the average person, it sounds like, oh, well, someone stole some, where I like to go shopping and things like that. But can you share with us why the Communist Party of China is after that data and how powerful that can make them?
So, what the Chinese Communist Party realized with the internet revolution was the power that Silicon Valley had developed in their technology and their applications and services and business models was incredibly valuable towards the way that they go to war. What Silicon Valley built was this incredible machine to take data that they collect about you and to turn that into algorithms and applications and services that encourage you to be better consumers, right? This is what's turned Apple into a $2 trillion company. What's made Amazon, so powerful, and what has turned the FANGs, the Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Googles of the world into 25% of the Standard & Poor's 500. So the Chinese Communist Party saw that. But American companies have such a stranglehold on the information economy, primarily because the major platforms for the mobile internet are Apple and Android, and they couldn't break that. In fact, Huawei, for example, was required to use Android on their smartphones because they didn't have an equivalent platform like Google. And so what they realized in 5G was that they could bypass the smartphone. And I'll give you an example because I lived this in 2017 as a senior defense official in Beijing and defense attaché. In 2017, you could order something at a restaurant in China on your phone and then walk into the restaurant and never have to touch your phone again because the camera would recognize and the server would greet you by name and hand you your food. So they had been successful in creating this ability to move away from the smartphone into the smart city. So now the city tracks you. In Beijing today, there's 2 cameras for every person in Beijing, all powered by artificial intelligence. They can do facial recognition. They can do gait recognition. And, of course, there's microphones to do voice recognition. So now they can track everything that you do. And so what 5G is designed to do is to disintermediate you and the smartphone. In other words, rather than having to take out your phone and order an Uber on a street corner, you just say Uber. A camera picks up your face, does facial recognition, reads your lips, or a microphone picks up your voice, does voice recognition, and sends you a car. You never have to touch your phone. The idea, though, when they capture that data, is now they can begin to influence you in the same way that Silicon Valley tech companies influence you to buy things. Except now they're also focused on the social and political orientation that you have. Now, the way that they do this today in China is through something called the social credit score. In other words, they track everything you do. If you jaywalk, if you criticize the government, if you have bad friends, if you smoke, if you gamble, if you do things that you'll show up late to work, all of this stuff is tracked and is put into your social credit score. If your social credit score drops below a certain level, you can't get on a city bus. You can't have access to government services. You can't get a loan. Your kids can't get into university. You can't get a raise or a promotion in your job. And it becomes a way to slowly up from society. And so the Chinese Communist Party, in realizing that, from 2007 to 2018, the FANGs went from, not being in the top of our economy, of an information economy, and actually instead, in 2007, when the iPhone comes out, you have AT&T, General Electric, Microsoft, ExxonMobil, and Shell as the top 5 market cap in the country. 10 years later, we move into this information economy. So the Chinese Communist Party intends to take this vision of the world, except, instead of the Facebook and Amazon and Google being the top companies in the world economically and financially, you'll slowly see Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent rise to prominence as people start to move away from the smartphone and start to use the smart city. People may say, oh, this is not coming, but today you can go to CVS and use Alipay to pay for things. You can pay for a New York taxi using Alipay. Now today, you use your smartphone. Tomorrow it's just going to be your face. And as that data becomes in China's hands, in their giant data lake, because what they're creating, what the Chinese Communist Party is creating, is what they term the Saudi Arabia of data. Because data drives artificial intelligence and machine learning and these algorithms that allow them to know you better and therefore influence you better. Today, China will go to a company and say, your employee tweeted something we don't like. We want you to fire him. And today, U.S. corporations will obey the Chinese Communist Party because they don't want to interfere with their ability to access markets in China. Tomorrow, they won't even have to go to them because it'll slowly be built in to the system. You won't have access to services. You'll try to, order something on Amazon and you won't be able to order it. This is, instead of Amazon, Alibaba that, is essentially taken over and purchased Amazon. This is what's coming. And, you don't see it because people aren't, recognizing the slow change in our society. It's not meant to be rapid like, a Pearl Harbor. It's meant to come over years and years and years of slow change, just like we went from, industrial society in 2000 when the iPhone came out. In fact, I remember Steve Ballmer of Microsoft laughing at Steve Jobs when he came out with the iPhone in 2007 saying, what are you going to do with that? And, of course, he changed the world. So this is what's going on right now and why this is such an important thing for Americans and for our freedoms.
And I think that one of the things where we talked about how the Chinese government is getting their tentacles all through not only the political system of the United States, but also through corporations and other things. If you question whether or not they have this power, I think that any of us could look and see that the Chinese government objectively, just in things that anyone could see as far as being our economic rival, military rival, cultural rival, is the biggest adversary of the United States. Yet if you turned on your media or if you listen to a debate, all you hear is about places like Russia. And so the fact that they're so powerful that they're able to currently shift our narrative away from the dangers of them onto other countries, I think is proof of just how dangerous it is and how close they're getting to be able to achieve the things you're talking about.
That's absolutely correct. They're focused, and this is why it's so hard, why I had such a hard time trying to explain to people in the Pentagon what look, they're used to fighting wars with weapons. What I tried to explain to them is that we've created a world of information, and that information allows you to be influenced without your perception. This is a world that the Chinese Communist Party excels in, and they understand control of the narrative. We do not understand this at all, and in fact, we are losing because we are fighting a different type of battle. In fact, we're not fighting. We find ourselves in a war that we don't even recognize.
I totally agree. And one of the things I wanted to ask is it almost seems insurmountable. And I know that you've been working with the Trump administration to fight back against this. So being as how this show is about getting out the vote for Trump, why is it that re-electing Donald Trump will stand a much better chance at fighting back against this than a Biden-Harris administration?
Well, first of all, Biden is very, very close to the Chinese Communist Party leadership. He said so himself. Now, the president has said, he and she are good buddies, but what I can tell you is that, as working for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, I represented him at the National Security Council during my time at the Pentagon. The Obama administration would do absolutely nothing to push back on the Chinese Communist Party. And this is the same way it was for the Bush administration and the Clinton administration, all the way back going to Nixon. And so what I saw with President Trump is finally a president who said, why are we bending over backwards for these guys? Why are we sending all of our factories? Why are we sending all of our jobs? And what his administration officials would come back to him and say is, well, because that's the way, this is free market. And the president is like, well, they don't believe in free markets. They don't believe in free trade. Well, but, so what I'm telling you is President Trump, in spite of all his advisors telling him, we shouldn't put tariffs on China, we shouldn't put pressure on China, he pushed back and said, no, we have to. And so, for me, as a libertarian, I looked at what the president did, and he stood up for the country. And I can guarantee you, having seen how the Obama-Biden administration worked with China, which is no different than the way that any other administration worked with China, and given the fact that, Biden himself has professed to have a strong relationship with the Chinese Communist Party, and we know his son has gotten, millions of dollars, literally millions of dollars from the Chinese Communist Party, I've got a big problem with that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one of the things you said that resonate is how China's strategy isn't just to bribe someone, but it's to basically develop a working relationship with them to basically get them to buy into the ideals of China. That sounds eerie when you look at the debates and you see how both Biden and Kamala Harris could barely breathe an adversarial word about China. Now, this is where we know COVID came from. And this is where we know, for example, we had a spy in Dianne Feinstein's employ for 10 years. So there are clearly things that we could see that any elected leader in this country should be able to say, yes, this is an adversary. Yet it was like pulling teeth to get Biden or Harris to say one bad word about them.
Well, he's not just Biden, but look at Pelosi. Her daughter or something is married to Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom gave the Chinese $1 billion for masks in California. I mean, when you go through the political elite in this country, and you go one removed from them and look at their personal family, and this is on the right and the left. If you've been in Congress for 20, 30, 40 years, I guarantee you somebody is making a ton of money with China.
Yeah.
And that's because this is how the Chinese Communist Party does things.
And when you go ahead, Carlos.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Rob.
I was going to say, the tools that you're talking about, them being able to use, this seems like things that I could see a streak of the establishment Democratic Party and maybe even some establishment Republicans wanting to have access to that sort of data themselves to help them get control. So it's doubly scary because not only are we dealing with an adversarial country using a sophisticated attack on us, but this is also being done in tandem with leaders in our country that would welcome those sorts of tools to consolidate their power as well.
Absolutely. You see that. I mean, look, it's the old adage, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so the Democratic Party, you can tell, as soon as we got into this campaign, you know, Nancy Pelosi has traditionally said things about Chinese Communist Party, you know, human rights violations. They've gone completely silent.
Yep.
And that's because they know that a lot of them are in bed with the Chinese Communist Party, and in particular, Biden is. And so they didn't want China to be featured in this election because they know it looks bad for them, particularly because their candidate is so in bed with China.
Carlos?
So I have two questions. I'm going to ask you the first one about the NBA and your thoughts about the NBA in China. And then the second one is probably going to get us kicked off of YouTube. But here's the question. Did the sanctions in the spring of 2019 lead to COVID coming to the United States without them letting us know what was happening, given that they stopped flights within China from Wuhan, but led flights from Wuhan to Europe and the United States? Your comments.
I don't know the motivation. Yeah, I don't. Oh, so on the NBA, clearly the NBA is in the tank with the Chinese Communist Party. You saw recently that Daryl Morey is leaving the Houston Rockets. Now, you know, the NBA declined, or the team declined to fire him immediately after his comments or his tweet with regard to Hong Kong last year. But you see he's leaving. And so I imagine what the NBA told the Chinese is that, hey, we'll get rid of them at the end of the season. We don't want to look like we're caving to you. And guess what? Now you can watch NBA games again in China magically. On the coronavirus, I don't know the motivations because it's impossible to know the motivations of the Chinese Communist Party. What I can tell you is that they deliberately spread the virus. I don't know its origin. I don't know how it was released, but I guarantee you, I promise you that the spread of the pandemic was deliberately orchestrated by the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party. Xi Jinping himself said he was in charge in Wuhan on the 7th of January when over 6 million people were allowed to fly to international destinations all over the world and spread the virus, while at the same time domestic flights were not permitted. So there's no doubt in my mind.
So we have another guest coming up. So because this is a Trump rally, a digital Trump rally, give us your very best reason why you love the President of the United States.
He's not a politician.
That's fantastic. Well said. And it sounds like that's the exact type of person we need to be able to combat what we see coming from China, who has been sophisticated enough to kind of get its tentacles in a lot of our politicians.
Absolutely.
So what we would love to do in the future is to have you come on our show on Saturday mornings and talk more about China, because the more we know, the better it is. And we love the fact that you called us and you gave us time. And have a safe drive. And we will talk to you again soon regarding China.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, General.
General.
Good morning.
Take care, bye.
Anybody hear me?
Yeah, good morning, Commissioner. Sorry, we were on a phone call on the other line. So Carlos and Todd will be joining us shortly, hopefully. So
Great.
You there, Carlos? Can you hear me, Carlos? Oh, he's putting his earbuds in. There we go. It's been a long night.
I'm sure it has.
Carlos, would you like to introduce our next guest? You're muted, buddy. There you go.
Sorry about that. I thought I had clicked it off. Next up is Tioga County Commissioner Roger Bunn. And I talked to your chairman, Don Hoffman, and he says, you have to talk to the great Roger Bunn. So here you are. And with us is Todd Bartley. Good morning, Todd. And the great Robert Knorr. We are in our 21 hours and 44 minutes into the 24-hour digital Trump rally. Welcome, Commissioner.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to join you this bright early morning. I think we're going to have some sunshine in Tioga County, and I'm ready to go.
Let's go get him, buddy.
That's the name of the game today, is go get them.
So why don't you start by giving us an idea of what the State of the Union in Tioga County is, from your perspective as a commissioner?
Sure. From my perspective as a commissioner, the State of the Union here it's pretty good. We are very, and I'm sure Don Hoffman has shared this with you, red, very conservative. We went for President Trump at about 74% in 2016. This year, with the efforts that have been put in, I'm hoping we get over 75%. Check his name. Economically, we're all suffering because of the COVID lockdowns.
Right.
We're slowly opening under the guise of whatever. And we've had a balanced budget here for 12 years now, debt-free balanced budget. And, we have to give a lot of credit to Act 13, the gas fees. That's helped us make a lot of investments, and we didn't have to go into the taxpayer's pocket to do it, and it's going to be there for a couple more go-arounds. We redid the 911 center, we redid the courthouse, we redid human services. We've made some purchases where we needed to. So all in all, Tioga County's pretty good. I'm a little bit concerned with the folks moving from the suburbs because of the COVID. Real estate is booming here. And with that comes a little bit of blue. We have 3 Republicans, and we've had 3 Republicans for 12 years now. And I've done a write-in twice. don't want to do that again. That's too hard. But anyway, anything else you'd like to know about Tioga County? I'm here.
So I don't know if you heard, Rob, what the commissioner said. They have had, and correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner, they have had 12 years of balanced budgets with no debt.
How can we export the people working in politics there to the rest of the country?
and he said, you know, to be fair, he said Act 13 has helped them and they've done some infrastructure work, but 12 years of balanced budgets with no debt. My ears went like, what?
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. So, Commissioner, thanks for being here. I heard you say that, you know, that there are more blue people coming in with the booming real estate. So one of the things we've been asking people, if you could make the case to some of our Democratic friends that are maybe more traditional Democrats, like, you know, kind of union Democrats or for the working class Democrats, as to why the Republican Party and Trump are now the party of the working class and why they should go out today and vote for Trump and the Republicans.
What was the question, or was it just a statement?
Yeah, no, I was. Can you make a case for those people that maybe are in your district? You know, why they should vote Republican?
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. There are a lot of those here, right in my hometown, which was for years been a foundry here. They make pipe fittings, cast iron pipe fittings, and. It's interesting. My father worked there, and it's interesting of how many Republicans are actually there, how many hard left Democrats there are. But there are those folks that that I know will vote for Trump. They won't tell you they're going to, but I know they will.
Yeah,
a couple of them may put a sign in their yard, but. They are very, very, very rare. But yeah, I think he will pull a lot of those.
That's awesome. Carlos?
Well, they benefited from his policies.
Right.
Yeah, and you know, when you think about cast iron pipe fittings, you know, that's not a common widget anymore.
Right. Well, on that, like kind of on that note, I think one of the things we see, despite the media rhetoric and the narrative around it, there are a lot of communities that traditionally on average haven't been Republicans that have benefited greatly from a Trump administration. So there's a lot of numbers, for example, showing people of color, Hispanic people, women, record unemployment, and it seems to be working in some of those communities that support seems to be rising. So one of the things I was wondering if you could talk about is when we have a strong economy, and regardless of rhetoric and the personality of someone, if their policies are effective, do you think that it's a persuasive message that we could make that even if you disagree with us, you still benefit, and that's a reason those policies over personality should be what we focus on when we're voting? Oh,
yeah, it absolutely should be. And that's a message I've tried to get over, that, you know, personality, to put it bluntly, is be damned.
Right.
We have to get this done. I know you're a little bit younger than I am, but I absolutely remember gas lines in this when was it, the 70s, and being able to only get gasoline every other day. Depending on your license plate, odd or even. I don't want to be energy dependent. And anybody that, I mean, and that's a small thing compared to what happens in a lot of parts of the world where people can't get food. Well, I couldn't get gas. And I was mad because the speed limit on the interstate was 55. But it's very frustrating to be driving on this big 4-lane highway. You're the only car, and you got to go 55 miles an hour. So the energy independence to me is just, it's almost, I won't say it's the key to everything, but it's really basic, because you can't be independent in anything else if you're not energy independent. You have to have energy.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I'll leave Carlos take it here, but just to comment on that real quick, I think a lot of younger people that never lived through that, they don't know what that's like. And so it's easy for them to disregard and think, oh, that everything's always, you know, they don't have to worry about those problems because they've never experienced them.
They don't have to worry about almost anything.
Right.
It's just some kids have to worry about where they're going to eat. I'll go there, but you're right. I have a granddaughter. Her parents are poor, but she still thinks everything is just grows on trees, or it's just provided. Doesn't realize the concept of work.
Right.
So, Commissioner, how have you guys been doing with respect to voter registrations? Did you get a lot of voter registrations on the Republican side? New voter registrations?
We've done really quite well. Now I don't have the numbers because I really wanted to actively campaign for the president, so I stepped off the Board of Elections.
Okay.
So I don't have all the details. I do know I've been at a couple rallies. One rally we were at, a rally. There were about 10 or 12 of us standing along the road waving flags, and we were there 3 hours, 4 hours, and we registered 8 people. This just stopped.
Right.
I did see one guy registering. I had visited with his mother not too long ago, and she said, "I got to get him registered. He just won't vote." And this guy's in his 50s. I saw him over there registering. So I do believe we've done well. Mary, I forget what her last name is. She's the Trump coordinator for our
Ziegler?
area. Yes. She did a real good job, and she identified a couple dynamic people to go after the inactive voters. And I know we got some of those inactives to be active. We got quite a few of them. But one of the things we did find out, there were a lot of them that don't live here anymore. So there was a real push. I was really impressed with Mary. If you know her and you happen to see her, tell her thank you for everything.
Yeah, she came to Williamsport and she visited with me. Fantastic gal. Todd.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning.
You were speaking moments ago about the energy independence, and in your part of Pennsylvania, can you share how critical the infrastructure is in the energy sector?
The infrastructure
to your economy?
Well, it has really changed since COVID. And right now they're not fracking. So there was a lot of these secondary industries that really were supported by the active drilling. Right now they're still doing pipelines. So there's still a lot of support for that. The gas companies have been real good on some of these really secondary roads. There is one road that I would like to travel every day, but it's so bad. I don't want to take my truck on it anymore. And in cooperation with the state, the gas driller is going to redo that road. So that's a direct impact on some physical infrastructure, if that's the kind of infrastructure you were talking about, or were you talking jobs?
That, and then with the COVID impact of the jobs on the economy, and then the proposed ban on fracking and transition away from the fossil fuel industry that the Democrat candidate for president, Joe Biden, kind of stepped into in that last debate, and your real-time reaction when you heard something like that?
Overall, it would just be, but the part you don't see about it is all the royalties that are being paid. There are some, one of our state reps, former state reps, said when this first started there's going to be a lot of rich farmers.
Yeah.
And it saved many farms, absolutely saved them. They were able to replace, they were working with equipment that was older than old. And so it would be really bad. We'd be back to where we were I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, we were struggling. It would be, then aside from, then we're energy dependent. So the price of everything goes up. Right. It would destroy every economy. But, you know, what would the price of gas be? You know, I heat with natural gas here in my home. And if I've heated with oil before, that wasn't nice. But we can't lose that. For the foreseeable future, it's there. Yeah, renewable energy is important. It's going to be important one day. But what do you do with all those old batteries? What do you do with the blades for that come off of those windmills? What do you do with those solar panels when they're done, when they're wore out? And they're not recyclable.
It's interesting you mentioned the blades on the windmills. It's my understanding that there are very few landfills where those blades can be disposed of. Am I correct in that? Because as you mentioned, they're non-recyclable.
That was my understanding. There was a real good article. If you track down his office, he could give it to you, I'm sure. Is Senator Yaw did a very good article on green energy. He really went into batteries. These batteries, you don't just put them in a landfill. And what's the cost? It's all those hidden things that, oh, gee, I can go plug my car in and I didn't have any emissions and I'm really doing my part. Well, there's everything that goes on behind the scene.
Now, just an interesting anecdote, and then I'll yield the rest of my time. An interesting anecdote that was circulating the internet was a gentleman had just purchased a Tesla, and as many people may know, that vehicle doesn't run on gas. It's an electric car, if you will, or battery-driven car. And this individual, apparently not aware that they had just bought an electric car, pulled up to a gas pump.
Oh my.
And is walking around the Tesla trying to find the gas tank to put liquid fuel into the Tesla. And it went viral. To your point about the batteries and everything else, I mean, I don't know how much of a saturation point we are with, you know, the electric car.
Right.
Well, you know, and aside on that too is your first responders. When you're responding to a Tesla that's been in an accident, they know how to handle gasoline power accidents. Batteries are a whole other issue. They can be electrocuted. If something shorts, there's a lot of juice in those batteries.
Yeah, I never even thought of that. So I know you said you weren't involved in kind of keeping track of voter registration, but just a gut feeling of what you see there in Tioga, do you feel there's more enthusiasm for Trump and Republicans this year than there was in 2016?
Let me put it this way. I have a friend that 4 years ago said to me, Roger, you need to get a Trump sign in your yard. You're a commissioner and people pay attention to what you say, what you do. I said, oh man, I don't know. That guy's, I don't know, you know, and I'm a commissioner for everybody. It took me a while, but I finally put a sign out there in the yard. And by the end of year one, I was on board.
Right.
And here I am at the end of year 4. I stepped off the board of elections so that I could actively get out there and campaign for him.
That's awesome. So
if I am any example, and I'm just one person, and the excitement up here is it's just, I say over and over, if Tioga County is any example of rural America, he will win this big.
That's awesome.
But you know, we're just 30,000 voters. So, but the enthusiasm and people that you would not even think. So I'm excited about it. I'm really positive about what's going to happen today.
Well, I can tell you, we've talked to county chairman commissioners from all over the state during this stream, and everywhere from Perry County to, you know, Wyoming County to one of them that even surprised me, Center County, where State College is. And I hope you'll be happy to hear they're even reporting college students like they've never seen supporting Trump majoritarily because they're tired of the lockdown. And and so I think that it's just a perfect storm to see not only the enthusiasm from traditional Republican voters, but bringing people that were kind of non-political before, like you mentioned, that you had some success signing up some non-political people, because the perfect storm of Trump kind of working for the average person and then the lockdown Democrats and what Tom Wolf's done here, I think is going to lead to a good turnout for Trump tomorrow in PA.
Yeah, I really do. And the one thing where I was going to bring it up is Wolf and the impact of what he's done and how he's done it. You know, he's done it as an absentee governor. Right. And from a commissioner's point of view, everything is, all the counting and all this stuff is focused on counties, and it's county. But it took him, probably until May to even talk to CCAP.
Yeah.
And two of our commissioners are on the board. They're past presidents of CCAP. And those calls they sat there and listened. For the first half a dozen calls, the governor talked. And they would have a half-hour call, and they would only get to talk about 5 minutes. And one or two questions, and well, that's it. Time's up. Got to go. So the way he did it was, maybe a small lockdown to begin with was necessary. I'm not going to. We never know at the beginning of something what the road's going to be, but he's been an absentee governor.
I couldn't agree more. And that's been my big complaint the whole time. We're Pennsylvanians. We're willing to make sacrifices. We just want transparency. We want to know that, and look, anyone could make a mistake. If Governor Wolf would have locked down and it was a mistake, I could live with that. But what I can't live with is just the lack of communication, the double standards, and the seemingly contempt. I mean, he called people cowards that were concerned about the lockdowns and losing their jobs. Meanwhile, he was out there marching with Black Lives Matter, violating his own orders. So I think that, do you think some of that hypocrisy and some of that arrogance and absenteeism is leading to enthusiasm to vote for Donald Trump and the Republicans?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I don't know if it'll do that, but I believe it will. But it sure would lead them to vote against him.
Oh, right. And I've been saying all day, never would there be a more deserved albatross around someone's neck than if Pennsylvania goes to Donald Trump because of Tom Wolf. He would much deserve that distinction.
Absolutely. Oh, boy. Yeah, that would. Absolutely.
Carlos?
So my question is, the chairman told me that you were focusing on working on the Trump campaign to try to get the president elected. In the microcosm of Tioga County, what have you learned in trying to do that in this election?
I mentioned earlier the blue folks moving in here. One of the things I've learned is there are red people moving out of the suburbs too. Mm-hmm. That are so I thought everybody coming from the suburb was going to be a Democrat, but no, there are. And I have learned that there are people out there that we were totally unaware of that are willing to work, willing to volunteer, willing to get involved. Mm-hmm. So, excuse me, going forward, we need to tag these people and put them to work.
So what would you say in closing? What would you say would be the core reason why you love the president?
Well, I'm retired military. So his, and I know his concern for this country and our borders. I've been in a lot of countries that you wouldn't want to live in. You don't even want to visit. And I don't want America to become like that. And to me, his immigration, his border keeping America safe.
Todd?
We have to have a safe country to make great. If we're not safe, we can't make it great. We just can't do it. We have to have those borders.
Todd, do you want to close us out?
I got to tell you, this time in the show, right, in a 24-hour marathon, to have this level of a guest come on with this type of knowledge and information to provide to fellow Pennsylvanians is an absolute treasure. Absolutely.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity to. I would just be sitting reading the newspaper now, so this is great. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to tell you a little bit about Tioga County and how we're doing.
Well, thank you so much, Commissioner. We really appreciate it. And hopefully you get to celebrate. Hopefully we'll have the results tonight and we'll all be celebrating. And looking forward to speaking to you again.
Yeah, real quick.
Yeah.
Our state rep, Clint Owlett, we were talking about the Trump trains. He says, how about Sunday we have a Trump celebration train?
That'd be great. Yeah. That'd be fantastic.
I'm just curious. Do you have, or does Clint have an over under on how long of a Trump celebration train that would be? Because we've seen anything from, a parking lot full of vehicles to almost 100 miles. Any insight in that?
I think we could get probably 300 vehicles.
That's amazing.
Yeah. There one went. I had some pictures of one. Well, yesterday or Sunday, one went through. That there were about 350, and I think it took them about 20 minutes to get by. It was fantastic.
Wow.
I just out of this world. So, all right, guys, you have a great day. And I can't try. I've run 24-hour relay races before, and I know what it gets like. Hour 22. So, stay away.
We are at hour 22.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right, we'll
Thank you.
Take care.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So I just got off the phone with Lycoming County Commissioner Tony Masar.
Yeah.
And he will be coming in at 6:30.
Okay.
And unless someone calls me and says, "Hey, can I jump on?" Our last guest will be at 7 o'clock, which will be U.S. Army Intelligence Officer Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer.
What a way to finish it out. Let me ask you, Todd, how went the writing last evening?
I am putting touches on as we speak.
Yeah. So how many hours of sleep did you get?
A couple. And what was even better is the wake-up call. The wake-up call from the garbage man, because with everything going on last night, we forgot to put it where it normally goes, so you can hear him going through the entire driveway, front and back. It was outstanding. I'm like, oh, there's the certain time in the early AM hours that we need to get back on the show.
It's probably the worst thing you've ever woken up to, hearing in your driveway, right?
Exactly. Right. Exactly. I mean, those blinking lights were actually blinking lights this time.
But not napalm. Yeah, how about that?
Correct. Yeah.
So you missed,
too soon, Rob. Too soon.
You missed the guest we had that actually went the longest was a Biden supporter. So we had, while you were asleep, we had darn near 2 hours of a Biden supporter strictly talking foreign policy. But I thought it went well, and I'm really happy with the quality of guests we've had, and I can tell my eyes are getting heavy, but I still feel energetic. All I have to do if I start to feel tired is just look at the insanity that we're going to see, once the numbers start coming in tonight. And that's enough to keep you up on its own.
One of the things that's come up since the initial story at 9 o'clock yesterday morning, and what a whirlwind, right? We're not even 24 hours removed from that. Is that Wendy Bell was going to come back on the show last night. Well, what she was hearing back from people on her show was how a story like this happens on the eve of the election. And as we've seen, and Carlos can probably speak to this better than myself, is just the ingenuity of normal Pennsylvanians, right? Trying to help each other out to make sure their ballot, yeah, see, hour 22. Their ballot can be cast. And right here in Lycoming County, the county coroner is the top public health official. He's come up with a very ingenious way, and we're going to report it here in the story later this morning. Carlos, what an ingenious way for somebody that's had the COVID-19 exposure, whether the COVID positive or contact traced, that he can help Forrest Lehman, who's the director of voter services, who's already having a busy day. He came up with a very ingenious idea.
What's that?
Where the person that's in quarantine can actually call voter services, stay in their vehicle, have voter services bring them the ballot, and do it all in one, almost like a drive-through type of situation. They're not necessarily monitoring the ballot, right, and watching the person cast their vote, but they're giving them the opportunity to do that and then return the ballot back into voter services. I just think it's ingenious.
Well, and it is genius. And I want to say we've been getting, I think we've been shuffling, probably very few people have stuck with us for 24 hours. So someone was asking about, like, how can we be sure the people counting the ballots aren't being corrupt? So I think it's worth repeating the two stories that you broke yesterday, Todd, less than 24 hours ago, the day before the biggest election in our lifetime. The first, and I'll make these as simple as possible. The first is our Pennsylvania governor sent out quarantine letters to people if they had COVID. What's that? Or the Secretary of Health. I'm sorry. Yeah, right. If they had COVID, or if contact tracing showed they were connected to someone who had COVID. So they were meeting with around someone that had COVID. And it said that basically they couldn't leave the house or they could be forced quarantine. But they never bothered to say, oh, by the way, this is what you need to do if you need to vote. So there are potentially thousands of people that receive this letter and think, oh, I'm not allowed to go vote. When the great Todd Bartley with us here asked the Secretary of Health, have you given any guidance to these people on how they could vote? She basically said, I'll get back to you. And then 2 hours later, they released a press release saying that they would have to contact, I forget exactly who, but that the election board that would contact a sheriff to come to their house, get the information, go get the ballot, take the ballot back to the house. The problem of which obviously is that the majority of people probably won't have seen that press release. And so there stands to be thousands of people that think they're legally not allowed to vote, or that they could get in trouble if they leave their house to try to vote. So that's an example of voter suppression. And again, everybody knows that the game is this. The Democrats are going to win the pre-election voting, and then the Republicans, can they have a big enough turnout on Election Day? So this would significantly harm Republicans by keeping the numbers of people voting Election Day down. The second story involving this was notification directly from the state of the people that will be counting ballots, and they instructed them that they are to accept ballots even if they are not postmarked or are postmarked after November 3rd. They are to accept those ballots anyways, unless there's a preponderance of evidence that there was something incorrect with them. So in other words, no postmark, no problem. So your question about how can we be sure that there won't be corruption, that's what we're worried about. Whether it be corruption in the court cases we've seen about signatures not having to mask, the two stories we broke today, the taking ballots up to 3 days after the election. But yeah, I mean, there is a significant concern that even if you take corruption out of it, Carlos and Todd, I think that you'd both, we've kind of agreed to this. We could be looking at another 2000 Florida situation with the hanging chads and litigation going on for weeks.
And here's my question. If there are 9 million, right, of the 13 million Pennsylvanians that are expected to cast a ballot, and we get a number tonight, 8.5, 8.75 of ballots that have been cast and counted, right? So we're down to 250,000 ballots across 67 counties. Just an example that they anticipate to count or still to receive.
Right.
Is that 250,000 total enough one way or the other to decide this election? Or in places like Tioga County, places like Lycoming County, where, as we've heard, 75, 76% voter turnout across the electorate. That's not necessarily Republican turnout, that's electorate turnout. Are the margins in those counties that traditionally go red enough to offset anything going on in Allegheny County, in Pittsburgh, potentially Erie County, in the northwest corner, and Philadelphia and the collar counties around Philadelphia. Because again, that's what the electorate's done historically in this state. I don't think I'm speaking out of school. Historically, that's the way the electorate's gone.
I think that there's going to be part of what you're saying is going to be true. Not all, but part. Because we've lost some counties. I think it was like 7 or 8 counties, Robert, that went Democrat from 2018. Mm-hmm. And so from what Tiberius was telling us today, there's a lot of things at play in Pennsylvania. Blue dog Democrats, unions, fracking, correct, Rob?
Right.
And, those are big time issues. Black Lives Matter, not helping the Republican establishment, with rioting in Philadelphia. And I just, how long have we been voting in Pennsylvania? And how many Republicans voted because of the riots in Philadelphia? But more importantly, how many independents? And where was the number that we got? Was that from Tiberius? So
increased voter registration?
26,000 new Democrat registrations. 100,000 independent registrations. And 162,000 Republican registrations. It cuts into from, I think it's like 900,000 to 700,000, the advantage that the Democrats have. He called the state for the Republicans, but we're going to see. And here's my last tweet today. I'm going to tell you what my last tweet, and it's going to be the same thing I'm going to post on the Republican County page. Make no mistake. Pennsylvania will decide this presidential election. That's it. Right. Our state will decide the election.
Well, and here's the question I have. Let's take corruption, or let's assume not even corruption. Let's just say that through sheer luck, that none of these shenanigans or, blunders that we've been discussing here affect things. So we're just going to say it's a straight up fair, no voter suppression, everything works as intended election. Where are the numbers that the Democrats win, right? Because maybe the people we're talking to are wrong. Tell me which of these statements seem incorrect to either of you. We're going to have more rural turnout and enthusiasm for Trump than we did in 2016. Does that sound fair? Seems fair, right? There's going to be a bigger percentage of African Americans that vote for Trump this time than 2016. Does that seem fair?
By a lot.
The same could be said of the Hispanic community. I think that even when it comes, I think maybe I'm wrong, but the fact that the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette endorsed Trump seems to me to kind of be indicative of there might be more people in the city that aren't people of color that kind of pinch their nose and say, I'm not a big Trump fan, but I'll vote for him, at least more than 2016. So where are the gains? And we've had increased voter registration for Republicans compared to Democrats. Where are the gains that the Democrats have made to swing? One I could come up with was, rural women is allegedly one that, a word I've heard is elderly people, that they anticipate elderly people shifting away from Trump to Biden. But where at? I don't see it in the counties we've just talked to, the commissioners and the committee people that we just talked to. So sorry to cut you off, Carlos. Yeah, go ahead. Where do you see it?
I'm going to show you right now. In their heads. In their heads. That's where they get the gains, in their heads.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what I'm saying.
I mean,
if it's not corruption,
what a crazy headline, right?
Yeah, I mean, if it's
under no scenario will Trump be allowed to declare victory. What are you talking about? How are you going to not allow the president to declare victory? I mean, listen, how do you stop him from this morning saying, you know what, I won? It's such, they're so blinkered and unhinged. There's just no definition for this. This is madness.
So my friend Tom, my campaign manager's on, and he just said that he doesn't think that there's going to be increased rural turnout for Trump because when he drives around rurally, he sees 30% Biden signs versus what he saw as 0% Hillary signs. And that I don't doubt that that's true. I think there will be more rural people that vote for Hillary or that will vote for Biden than did Hillary. But my question is, with the increased turnout, and I mean, Tom, I know you probably weren't able to listen most of the night, but I mean, we had county commissioners estimating 76% turnout in some of these rural counties. And that's a double-digit percentage over what we saw in 2016. If they're remotely accurate about that, even if 3 to 4% of that is Biden, it's still a net gain for Trump in total votes. Would that not be correct, Todd?
Correct.
So and then Tom, I know you're just typing and we have a guest on 8 minutes, but I do value your opinion. Tom lives in Center County. We had 2 guests from State College tell us that they are seeing unprecedented levels of Republican support, or particularly support of Donald Trump from college students, many of which are furious about the lockdowns. And so they've had a litany of college students registering to vote and coming in to pick up Trump signs. Is that something that you've seen, Tom? Like when you go through campus, do you see Trump signs like on Frat Row and things like that? We'll see what he has to say, but I'll leave Todd or Carlos pick up from there.
So I do respect Tom very much. Enthusiasm for both. Listen. I'm being fair. I don't see the enthusiasm for Biden other than the Twitterari and the Facebook and online on the battlefield. I don't see it at all. So,
I mean, I will say that I have seen more Biden signs in Clarion than I saw Hillary signs. I would say that it's probably about 80% Trump, 20% Biden. However, let me be clear. I don't know what those signs mean a lot of times. I know when I'm outside of the town of Clarion and I see a sign in someone's yard, that owner put that sign there. But I don't know, like when I'm in Clarion, how much of it is just the Democrats contacted a landlord and were like, can we put some signs up? You know what I mean? So
no, they're working hard. The Democrats are working hard like they always do. But what does it mean? Do more signs mean that this is how we manifest our hate for Donald Trump, or does it mean we love Joe Biden?
Well, and
it's the former, no? It's the former, no?
That's the question. The question is I don't think there's any enthusiasm for Biden. The question is,
with all due respect to Tom.
Oh, no. But I know what he's saying.
I don't see it in my heart, in my eyes. I don't see it.
I'm assuming Tom would agree with me, though, that it's not enthusiasm for Biden. It's enthusiasm against Trump. And so can the enthusiasm against Trump be enough to overturn the results of the 2016 election versus the enthusiasm for Trump? And, it's a question. I don't know.
Moreover, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Moreover, does the hate for Trump, here it is, mean more votes?
I mean, I think there are people that would, do anything to vote against Trump, and there will be a certain segment that is enough to get enthusiasm to get out there. How many people does that appeal to? I don't know, but let me ask you this: if you didn't see one poll, if there wasn't one poll, right? You live in an imaginary world where you have not seen one poll. From all the other stuff you see, who would you think's winning in Pennsylvania? I mean, it's clear.
I'm embarrassed to say that I love you, Todd. I'd be with Todd. This is a red wave.
Right. I mean, everything you see, the momentum's
tsunami. Get it right, Carlos. Tsunami.
Hey, stop picking on the Latinos, okay?
Come on, don't play that card. We only have an hour and a half to go. Made it through.
So listen, right now the Latinos that are winning, okay, the MAGA Latinos are the Cubans in Miami, okay? Just ask Robbie.
Yeah. Not me, Robbie. Robbie Starbuck. Yeah.
Robbie Starbuck. 30,000 cars, not people, cars.
I just don't.
So how do you translate that? And that's the thing that we've been struggling with, right? In the last 6 or 7 months. What is the English to politics translator that says, well, 30,000 car rally in Miami means, does it mean that Broward County is red? I don't know.
I mean,
Where's Tiberius?
Yeah. It's stunning to me. And this is something I asked my wife. It was like, can reality, can it be that you see, I mean, I don't know. Let me put it this way. It's getting late. Let me put it this way. I guess if everything was accurate, right? Like, I remember being a Ron Paul supporter, and I remember watching him selling out venues. Like, he was kind of a mini Trump, like, where, this guy'd show up to a ball field somewhere, there's 10, 12,000 people, but he's getting like 1-2% of the primary vote. And it made me question, like, am I in a bubble? Like, does this mean nothing? And that's how I feel now. It's like, if Trump loses this, particularly if he loses big, it's just, I guess it shows that there was a small number of people that were very enthusiastic. And then there was a bunch of people that were indifferent or that, thought that he was a danger. But I mean, it just seems, I don't know what to believe with these polls. I mean, I go back and forth where it's like, hey, they were wrong before. They're tightening now. It's, but everything else I'm seeing other than the polls, like Todd, you said earlier, when you see the lieutenant governor basically freaking out the day before the election, like, that says something, right?
Think about this, folks that have been with us either for 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 5 hours, almost 23 to 24 hours. Think about this for a minute. You're listening to a national media who covered a story for multiple years that was an absolute hoax. It's something that would make Jesse Smollett, the French actor, that Dave Chappelle talks about in the special, it'd make him blush. That's how bad the information was that they used to impeach a sitting president. And yet we have actual documents, actual emails. An actual person on the emails has gone public to say, that's my name. I remember receiving the email, and yet it's as bad as it gets. And yet that person's ignored.
Yeah, well said. Yeah.
I digress. By the way, I defer my time for the introduction to Carlos Saldivia.
All right.
Good morning. I'd like to introduce the Lycoming County Commissioner, Tony Masar, to the show. Welcome, and thank you for coming on this morning, Commissioner. We're here with the great Robert Knorr and Todd Bartley, and I suspect that Robert has a flask.
I do not. Just Diet Mountain Dew. I've made it. It's great to see you, Commissioner.
We're doing great. You guys look alive and well.
We're getting it.
We had some unbelievable. At some point, we're going to have to get together, and we're going to tell you the story of what happened yesterday. It was triumphal with respect to the most unbelievable Republican luminaries that have ever been congregated in one 24-hour period ever. Is that not accurate, Robert?
Oh, I would say. But I will say this before we brag too much about ourselves. I feel like Trump could have done this 24-hour stream and then did like 3 or 4 rallies afterwards. So we still don't have his stamina, but we're trying, you know.
So I guess the very first question. So I want to talk about Massachusetts, okay, and Scott, and I want to talk about the small business, you know, organization that you belong to. And I want to talk about COVID and the juxtaposition of keeping Lowe's open and shutting down small businesses like carpet stores that or stores that compete with Lowe's. But please start and walk us through how Tony Masar became a Republican.
Well, it was quite easy. In my family, my father was a Democrat, my mother was a Republican. So we heard from both sides of the aisle on that. But what I realized is I always wanted to be in business. Paper routes, paper corners, you name it. Yeah, we did it as kids. And why? Because we like to earn our money and do with it as we pleased. And as my time evolved, becoming a young adult, male adult, I realized, boy, the Republican Party is where I want to be. I believe that people should take care of themselves as much as they can. And guess what? When they keep their money, they can give it to the organizations that need it the most. Okay, there's nothing more important than to be able to give it back, and in your own community. The government, by buying $25,000 toilet seats, just don't do a very good job of that.
Totally agree.
Todd?
Commissioner, I'm not going to apologize for the stories that I broke yesterday. However, what was your reaction in real time to the situation developing with those in COVID quarantine that may have wanted to go to the polls today, being told by 2 cabinet members that they can't go to the polls in person, that they have to go get a special absentee ballot on the eve of the election or on election day, and then Sheriff Lusk having to get involved in Lycoming County, and then sheriffs across the Commonwealth have to get involved to make sure these folks have the integrity of their ballot ensured to be able to cast a vote today. What was your reaction to that?
Well, it's typical. Okay, I mean, it's so unbelievable, but yet normal. This is the most bizarre event that I've ever seen. I think they've lost their minds. It makes no sense. But I can assure you, here in Lycoming County, you know, we have a phenomenal group of people at this county. No one would ever have to fear that they could not vote regardless of their condition. Okay, Todd, you've been amazing at breaking certain stories. And Robert, you know, I have a lot of respect for you. When you ran for our congressional seat, I think you impressed the entire, the entire group. And we appreciated your humor and intellect at the same time.
Thank you.
Commissioner, if I may follow up, we broke this story last night with former Congressman and U.S. Attorney Tom Marino. I'd like to get your reaction to this as well, and we're going to be publishing the details of this story later this morning, of course, on Election Day. This is from the Secretary of State's own document in regard to canvassing and getting the ballots that we're talking about that they're going to process for the next 3 days after Election Day. It states ballots that lack a postmark or other proof of mailing, or for which the postmark or other proof of mailing is illegible, are presumed to have been mailed by Tuesday, that's today, November 3rd, 2020, and are valid and must be counted, unless a preponderance of the evidence demonstrates that the ballot was mailed after November 3rd, 2020. What's your reaction to this idea that a lack of a postmark and lack of preponderance of evidence is going to have a ballot that is presumed to have been mailed and is then presumed to be valid, be cast as a vote?
Well, let me explain first that rulings like this is why people don't trust the system anymore.
Right.
I mean, it does not make sense. You must have lived in a cave if you didn't know the procedure to vote. The deadline is November 3rd. They've had 9 months to understand what is going on as far as the Act 77. You know, I think it's horrific, that decision, and especially the Supreme Court ruling on that 4-4. This should not happen. What we're instructed to do is take those from today after 8 o'clock, sequester them, and all the way up till Friday. I believe it's 5 o'clock, correct? And
correct.
Then we are allowed to canvass them, but we must keep them segregated. But when you sit there and say, if they're eligible or not, or legible or not, okay, what are you doing? You're creating doubt into the most valued thing American citizens have, and that's the right to vote. And it should not happen. This should not happen. We're going to play by the rules. Matter of fact, I said, as soon as I found out about this, Todd, I called up my elected officials and I said, create a quick bill and say we don't count votes in Lycoming County or any county in Pennsylvania until after Friday, 5 o'clock. Okay, then there's no way anybody could be feeding in any kind of votes. There could be no, you know, and to say it's illegible or not postmarked and count them, no, I just don't agree with that.
Well, Commissioners, as a final follow-up, and then I'll yield my time back to the other guys. I do want to ask you, we've been voting in the Commonwealth for eons, right? 2016 was hailed as the most consequential election in our lifetime. Why was this provision not put in 2016, and why is it being put in days before the 2020 election? I think it's very telling, don't you?
Yes, it's very telling. I'm going to add this though. We're administrators. We must follow the law as commissioners. And for our legislature, which is totally Republican, to have voted on Act 77 was a mistake. Without understanding the consequences or having it completely laid out, one of the biggest mistakes our Republican legislature has ever made, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point. And one of the things I was going to say, win or lose, whichever side wins this, we understand that the left has been telling us since 2016 that we have to have secure elections. We have to have confidence in our elections. How is it possible to have confidence when we see, not just in Pennsylvania, which we're seeing the insane measures that they're changing at the last minute, but all across the country? It's almost like they've intentionally took away the people's confidence. No matter who wins now, the other side's going to say the system was drastically changed at the last minute. We have questions about the results. Can you speak to a little to how much that could damage our country and our state?
Listen, all you have to do is try to go onto Google and find out what the United States paid in attorney's fees. Don't check. You won't find it. Okay? The attorneys are taking over this economy.
Right.
I'm sorry. There's no reason for this. It's just mind blowing. There are many states that have, done this before. Pennsylvania was not one of them. Okay, in mail-in ballots, and they do it well. I'm just going to tell you, here in Lycoming County, Forrest Lehman is phenomenal. And I'm going to say to the people out there that are watching this, do not cheat. Whether you're Republican or whether you're Democrat, do not cheat, because we will catch you. And we had an example of that here in Lycoming County yesterday, where we looked at the signatures and something didn't look right. Okay, we're doing our job, and you'll be prosecuted. You know, this is a serious crime. So that's what we do in counties to assure everyone that your vote is pretty secure and feel confident in the system.
That's good.
So, Commissioner, can you tell us the story about the time that you and Mary went up to Massachusetts to do some politicking?
Yes, Carlos. I was on the leadership council of the NFIB, National Federation of Independent Businesses, when Senator Kennedy passed, and he was the 60th seat. And I believe the gentleman was named Scott Brown. And we heard he was down by, I think it was 22 or 28 points at the time. And I said to my wife, I says, pack up the bags. We're going up and we're going to try to get this guy elected. So we did. I called up Ken Shivers at the NFIB, who is the executive director. And I said, Kev, please, we're heading up to Massachusetts right now. Would you find a place where we could go call, where we can help Scott Brown? And he said, okay. He said, but what are you doing? And I told him again. And he goes, Tony, that's awesome. So we're driving up, I think it's 84, Route 84. He calls me back and he tells me where to go. So we got there. And we entered, they told us what to do. In the phone banks, I mean, there's just a lot of wires and phones all over. They give us the script. And I said, I don't need a script. Okay, I don't need a script. And so we're calling and people are answering. And you got to understand, at that time, 56% of the people are independents. Now, they're Democratic in values. They're registered as independents. And I said, I'm feeling proud. Mary and I come all the way from Pennsylvania, right, to help this guy out. And everybody on that phone that we were talking to said, oh, no, don't call me anymore. He's got our vote. He's got our vote. He's got our vote. And it was just endless how many people were receiving phone calls. So we took a break. And I started introducing myself to the other people that were calling. And I thought, you know, I'm patting myself on the back. I said, I came all the way from Williamsport because I felt obligated to do so. Next guy says to me, I came from Oregon. I felt obligated. I came from Texas. I felt obligated. It takes me into tears. The people all across this country, there was 32 states that were in that polling because they felt obligated. And that's what Americans do. And we call our own arms, okay? We will win this election. There's no question in my mind. The American people are not ready for this. They came out and they're going to do what they need to do to protect America from what we see as a takeover. It's a coup. And we're not going to let that happen.
Right. Yeah, and well said, and it really is inspiring to hear that confidence. One of the questions I've been asking from everyone from each county is, in Lycoming County, do you see more enthusiasm for Trump this year in 2020 than you did in 2016?
Oh, there's no doubt. I got an email this morning, Commissioner Masar, you need to stop Trump from having these rallies. He's spreading this virus all over the place. And he's not protecting the people. Well, let me tell you something. The people know what's out there. You know what? They still show up at those super spreaders, if that's what you want to call them. You know why? Because Trump has handled this the correct way. He got everybody involved that needed to be, and he did it in record time.
Right.
Okay. So we have a lot of confidence that we're not going to die if we do contract this. No way. Could it happen? Yes. But the measures that he took to protect the people, from shutting down China to Europe to the vaccine to, maybe he's not the correct messenger, but you want to know something? This guy is not afraid of anything or anybody.
Right.
And he proved that time and time again.
So let's move on and talk about coronavirus with respect to the lockdowns and a situation. So how did we get to, just explain it to me. I'm just a wayward Latino down West 4th Street. No one pays attention to me. I just ask questions. That's what I do.
Carlos, you're not just any Latino.
Explain to me why we can go to the supermarket, why we can fly on a plane, why we can go to Lowe's, why we can go to the liquor store. What am I missing, Rob?
Oh,
That's
casinos. It
depends.
casino.
It's a good start, right? But we can't go to church, and we can't go to rainbow carpets. Explain it to me.
Well, it kind of made me really mad.
I know it did.
They scared our employees. They scared customers. And yet they were saying it's okay. Go to your grocery stores. Go to Lowe's. You want to talk about super spreaders, if that was the case. Mm-hmm. All right. Carlos, did I tell you I think it's a coup?
Right.
Okay. No reason. None. And here's, I can get into all the correct answers on that. But let me say this. People must defy our government when something doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. It's never felt right. And now you're seeing more and more people understanding this from both sides of the party. I know so many Democrats that are voting Republicans today. Why? Something doesn't feel right. So from a business perspective, Carlos, they shut down my business. We were having the best year ever. And then we had to shut down. Well, let me tell you something. I'm sure I'm not the only one. This is the best year ever in 33 years I've had. Why? Because people are going to make sure small companies like mine survive. They patronized us. They'll patronize the restaurants. We are a community that is sometimes, we're rebellious, but let me tell you something. We're one of the tightest knit communities that I've seen all over this state. And I'm proud to live here. I'm proud of the people that are here, of all parties.
Right. No, and I think that's a focus that we've had in this show too. Something you said there, talking about Democrats that you'll see be voting for Trump and the Republican Party. I think that this is a unique opportunity that we've shifted the landscape of what the Republican Party is, and we've got back to it thanks to Trump to being the working man's party, the working class party. Mm-hmm. As a county commissioner, what would you tell to an undecided traditional Democrat voter out there that's, thought the Democrats were the party of the working class? What would you tell them why they should vote for Donald Trump and for the Republican Party now?
To me, it's obvious. Okay, I want to keep as much money in my pocket as I can. I don't want to pay more in taxes. Mm-hmm. I don't care if it's only $20. Okay, I'll spend it more wisely than the government will. But I think it's undeniable that this president is one of the most unbelievable presidents we've ever had in my lifetime, that he's connected to the people, just the hardworking people. He is connected to us. What president have you ever heard of that communicates to its normal people every morning, every afternoon, every evening? They don't. And guess what? It's unfiltered. He's not going to his advisors. He's not sticking his finger up in the wind to see which direction it is. He is the wind.
Absolutely.
You know what?
It's starting to sound like that guy, Carlos Saldivia.
Oh, yeah. I learned a lot from you, Carlos. But you have the right perspective, okay? From an outsider, you've seen the prejudice that can happen, you know, and it's real, okay? You know, you can say whatever you want to say about the Black Lives Matter. I don't like some of the things that they do, but in some cases, you know, they have been trampled on, and not by us anymore. I think the reality is it's an election year, and the Democrats use that to bring them to the nest. And you know what? I don't think it's going to work as much this year.
We, and I know Carlos and Todd, we've been saying this for so long. We are the big tent party. We are the party of content of character and not judging based on color of their skin. And I hope that this election is a springboard for the Republican Party, led by Donald Trump, to reach out to inner city communities and say, here's our deal. We treat you as an individual. You're not just a skin color. We're not Joe Biden that says if you don't vote for us, you're not really black. That's not who we are. And I hope that this election starts that trend where we could be the big tent party. We don't care about your skin color. We don't care about your ethnicity, all of that stuff. We just care about what is the content of your character. Do you love this country? Are you conservative minded? Are you, do you value the principles of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution? And I'm really excited that we're at an opportunity where we could see this be the springboard of increasing the size and the scope of our party for years to come.
Well said, Ron. I just hope when we look back and reflect back, we learn some lessons. And I think one of the, just to add, I think one of the lessons we need to learn is our educational. And Democrats will say this all the time. School vouchers, school choice. We don't like that. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. Go to the inner city and you tell me if you would want your child to learn under those circumstances in that educational system. No way. And regardless if it's private or not, these children have an opportunity for a better education outside of that public school. Now, we have great public school systems here for the most part, but in the inner cities, it's a lot worse.
Well, and to me, the irony is, remember, we're called the racist. We're the ones that are told we don't care about the inner city. Let me ask you this. In your community, do you trust to do what's best for your children? Of course. Why can't we give people in the inner city the same benefit of the doubt? Why can't we trust that those parents, if we give them school choice and vouchers, will make the best possible choice for their children? I'm the one who wants to give them that choice. Why is it that the left, they want to say, no, they're not capable of making that choice? So once more, everything they accuse us of, it's what they're actually doing.
I think the people see it.
Yeah, I think so.
Commissioner, we have 5 minutes before we bring on our final guest, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer. What's your core major political issue?
Well, currently, political issue, we need to straighten this mess out from a voting perspective.
Okay.
We cannot allow this to continue. And you can call this political or not. Outside of this, which is my top priority, we have to truly, Republicans, Democrats, independents alike. Let me hit this stat. There's 73,766 voters registered voters, of which almost 21,000 are Democrats, 43,000 are Republicans, and 10,000 are others. Okay. But what we must do after this election is we need to seriously look at the media.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's Pravda is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's Fox News or whether it's CNN and MSNBC, listen to me. These are corporations that are making billions and billions of dollars by dividing our nation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? This needs to stop. This needs to stop. We are Americans. And if you talk to a Democrat, he's going to say, hey, I'm just as an American as you are. You know what? He's right. So why are we so divided? And I'm telling you, the media is the biggest cause. And boy, we better nip this off at the bud as fast as possible.
We got 1 minute left. Tell us the single most important reason why you love the president.
Oh my God, you could write a book.
Just give us the core reason.
He is the most optimistic person I've ever seen in the world. He could look the devil in the eye and say, be gone, because you're not that big of an adversary. Okay.
I had COVID for 6 minutes and now it's gone.
Hey, Carlos, like you said, this is what he did when he come out. I got this.
I got this.
I love the guy's optimism. He's just phenomenal.
So the lieutenant colonel should be coming on any
he's
second.
In the waiting room. Yep.
Okay. Any last thoughts, Robert or Todd?
I just want to say thanks so much for being here. We're on to our 23rd hour. Your optimism and your energy is exactly what we needed right now. So thank you so much for coming on and for everything you're doing. And honestly, in this very serious note, not just to help Trump and the Republicans, but your commitment to make sure, regardless of what party people are, that every vote counts and that it's done in a fair way. I really find that commendable, and I'm glad there's people out there like you making sure that our constitutional rights are protected.
Thank you for being a friend of the show also.
Yeah, God bless you guys. Keep up the great work. Big things are going to happen.
I can't wait to see a social media post all day today and then tonight too, and then over the next couple of days. That's what I'm looking forward to.
All right, then. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
All righty.
All right, I'm bringing our next guest in. They should be coming in right now.
You know, I got to say, I mean, for never doing a 24-hour marathon, I mean, Rob's been one heck of a producer in this whole deal.
Doing great. Good looking. Still chipper for 23 hours in, right?
So I'd like to welcome to the show our very last guest, and we might have somebody call in. You never know, but so far our very last scheduled guest in our 23rd hour, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer, former Intel operative, president of the LCPR, and New York Times bestselling author. Tony, thank you for joining us today. How are you?
Good morning, guys. Hey, good. Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's good to be up early, since I was up late watching the president do his last rally in very late in the evening in Michigan. So it's good to see you all. And boy, it's good that you guys have been up 24 hours. I've done this sort of thing before. It reminds me, I flew into Germany one time and hadn't slept for 24 hours, and we went right into operations, and this is 85. So it was good to jump right in and do stuff. So it's good you guys are here doing stuff and leading the charge this morning. So
that's exactly right. And with us, Tony, is my friend Robert Knorr from Clarion County. And that is about 4 hours due west of Wilkes-Barre on 80. Yep. And then Todd is a journalist here in Williamsport with me.
Hey, good morning.
And I met Tony at the Lincoln Day dinner in Luzerne County, right, Tony?
Yeah, it's a couple of years ago now. Yeah.
So he had a speech, and
as you might recall, I actually outlined that the whole Russian collusion narrative was a hoax. You might recall that.
Right, you did. So actually, why don't we start with that? Why don't you give us your 3-minute or 5-minute roundup on your thoughts on that, because you were way ahead of the game.
Yes, I was. So just to put a very short summary of what we saw happening back then on the 4th of March of 2017, when the president tweeted out, I'd been wiretapped. I had absolutely no doubt he was telling the truth. And I went on Fox News and said, we're going to come to find that the entire infrastructure was behind it. You guys can go Google this. It's called Soviet level wrongdoing. And I actually used the phrase Soviet level wrongdoing because the appearance of what little I knew about at the time looked like this thing went all the way to Obama. And everybody thought I was crazy. Pete Hegseth, all those guys on Fox, and I even talked to them, it's like, man, we thought you were crazy. And I spoke to you guys about a year later on it, saying, no, there's something not right here, and we're going to come to find this was all done. And despite the entire mainstream media, some of the clowns you're going to see tonight covering the election said over and over, carried over and over all this false information that the Russians were behind helping President Trump get elected. And I don't know, maybe there's 64 million Russians in the country that helped elect him, but other than that, there was no Russian collusion. And I think that was the key, is that we all knew on my side, who were actual professionals who understood the system, there's no way that the Russians did it. We knew who did it, and some of that is still coming out. The FBI has never completely come clean about what they were doing. The whole hack of the DNC, this whole fiction that the Russians went in there. By the way, to this day, the FBI's never actually seen the DNC server. So I'm just saying, so things like that are still out there. But the bottom line was, when I spoke to you all at the Lincoln dinner, we knew that there's no way that this president, both because of who he is, would cooperate with the Russians, and secondly, there was just no evidence of it. So it was good to be ahead of the curve and obviously proven right.
And one of the things that I think's amazing. Oh, by the way, Rob Noor here. Great to meet you. One of the things I think was amazing is you could be an average person and you could have realized how much this story was garbage from the get-go. Because for me, it was this simple. And I didn't have insider access, but I remember saying in October 2017, if our intelligence community used unverified opposition research to spy on a presidential campaign, it is one of the biggest political scandals in the history of this country. And it's so much worse than that, we now know. If Donald Trump would pay for dirt from a Chinese source spy, say, for example, in order to spy on the Joe Biden campaign, there would be 500,000 people marching in Washington right now calling for his immediate removal and jailing. Yet somehow we know this all happened, and everyone's just like, well, it's just, every day for the FBI. It's just another day for them. It's despicable.
Right. Well, let's talk about that real quick, if you don't mind. I think the fact that they did it again in reverse regarding Hunter Biden, this whole laptop from hell. Look, I've spoken to the folks directly who have touched the laptop, and they, for a fact, know the chain of custody of the actual one. There's several images of this now out there. But this computer, Hunter Biden's computer, has been with the FBI for nearly a year. And there's absolutely no reason, zero reason for them to have not acted aggressively when they got this. They didn't act aggressively. If you or I had a laptop with all of that seditious, clear evidence of pay to play, clear evidence of, I've been told, child porn, if that was on there, we'd all be locked up. Mm-hmm. We'd be locked up within 30 days of that thing being in the custody. But no, this is a double standard. And I think this is something that, God willing, President Trump get elected today. I have no doubt that he's going to weigh into this, because it's very clear that he's given the system multiple opportunities to fix itself through the IG, through investigations. He's done all that. And he, you know, it's kind of like children. It's like, okay, children, you know, I've given you a chance to change your behavior. And it's something more extreme is going to have to be done regarding removal of Christopher Wray, and actually looking at how we reform or disband the FBI. It's really to that point, because clearly they're not working in the interest of the American people.
So my question to you is the following.
Sure.
How does someone like Director Wray stay in the game after we find out that the FBI has had the laptop for a year, and then 3 months later there is an impeachment of the president? Regular people, Tony, don't understand. Can you clarify it for us?
No, there's no clarification that I can make that would be justifiable regarding his actions. As a sworn officer of the government, Chris Wray took the same oath I did, you know, and I don't believe there's any expiration date on your oath of office.
Right.
And within the context of that, part of it is to be loyal to your chain of command. As a matter of fact, it talks about, you know, you're asked to be loyal to those who are appointed above you. And in this case, Wray was appointed by the president. The president is a supervisor. And if you come across exculpatory information that says, gee, the president was actually looking in the right place regarding corruption, that should have been put forth instantly. It's like, whoa, 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 stop. You know, this is the reality which we're facing. And it wasn't. So it again tells me that there's, I'm going to use this term, it always gets me in trouble, the deep state.
Yeah.
The deep state is alive and well, and the deep state it's not something that's entirely evil. It's not like we have these people in back rooms all planning evil things, although there's some of that. This is simply career bureaucrats like Wray not doing their job. You know, my analogy of this is having you know, a fleet of 100 trucks. 25 trucks are driven by people who just aren't with the game. And those trucks always have problems. They don't run well. They're always breaking down. The rest of the fleet does well, but you get about 25% who they go, you know, 45 in a 65 zone. They just make life miserable. They just don't do the work. That's right. And this is where he took a clear shot at the president by not admitting this existed. I don't even know if Barr knew this existed. But that's not acceptable, because his oath requires him to act in accordance with the Constitution, and he didn't do that. And I think this is why we have to do a deeper look, a much deeper look at the deep state, at why these people are still there. Because, I mean, let me say this too. President Trump made some mistakes regarding the choices of staff early on, and I understand why. I've had discussions with his people on this. As you all know, I'm close friends with Mike Flynn. Mike and I have had discussions on this. The idea that President Trump presented to the Republican Party was, let's kiss and make up. Let's bring in some of the infrastructure. Let's bring in some of the mainstream guys. Rance Priebus, who was mentioned last night, by the way, in Wisconsin, strangely enough, but that's okay. Rance came in, and the idea was to kiss and make up between the two sides. You know, there was a lot of, you know, last cycle, President Trump ran against the Democrats and the Republican Party.
Right.
This cycle, he actually had most of the Republican Party with him. But at the beginning, in 2017, during the inauguration, he tried to kind of bring the two sides together. It didn't work. It didn't work. And I think we saw, you know, H.R. McMaster, John Bolton, other folks who had their own ideas which really weren't in accordance with his, relating to how things should go forward. And fortunately, he's had a number of loyal folks, I can't get into who they are, who have always been there as kind of overwatch to make sure that people did the right thing. And I can tell you for a fact, H.R. McMaster was not doing the right thing. John Bolton got in there and went crazy. So, I mean, but he, you know, you gotta give these people chances, and I think he did. But I think that's where Christopher Wray came in that way too. He was a professional. He was highly recommended. Here, he's one of the FBI's own. Let the FBI take care of itself. It didn't work, and it's got to be changed.
Todd?
First of all, thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you, Todd. Yeah, I had a great time.
I got to ask you first before I really get into the tough questions that apparently I'm known for. I've looked up your biography. Yeah. How did you end up in the Ohio National Guard?
That's a great question. That's very rarely asked, by the way, too. So
Todd's from Ohio.
Yeah, no. Well, actually, no. I actually went to high school in Lisbon, Portugal, and you know, it's funny. I had stories of you probably know who Frank Carlucci is, Ambassador Carlucci or Secretary of Defense Carlucci.
Yeah.
He was ambassador to Lisbon, Portugal when I was there. His son and I used to go out drinking in our mid-teens, you know, 14, 15, and get drunk and come. It was really, you know, no drinking age back in those days.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I hang out with the Marines too, the Marine Guard there in the embassy. This is back in the 70s, you know, this is a long time ago. Anyway, so my dad moved to Dayton, Ohio, to Wright State Air Force Base, the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and I ended up going to college there at Wright State, and I joined the Ohio Army National Guard as a very young enlisted. I enlisted in October of 1980, right when I turned 18, and I voted the next month for the first. As a matter of fact, I'm doing a video next when I'm done with this, talking about the first time I voted in 1980 for Ronald Reagan and why I thought about Reagan and why I voted for him. So I ended up in the Ohio Guard. Colonel Chuck Connor was the boss there at the 371st Support Group. Chuck and I are still friends to this day. He called me out of the blue 2 years ago. I'm sorry, about a year ago, and said, "You turned out much better than I expected you would." He encouraged me. No, I'm serious. He actually he's like in his 90s now. He's a great guy. He called me, says, "You know, I encouraged you to go and be an officer. I was enlisted as just a private, went through and did field. If you go, for those in the military, nothing better than cleaning field ovens at 5 a.m., you know, after they cook the morning meal, builds character. So I started off the bottom in the Ohio Guard and went right through it. So I'm very proud of the fact that a lot of the folks I started out with were still very close friends. So it was, awesome. I loved the Ohio Guard. Miss a lot of the folks there, and I'd go back and do it again. So it was, but yes, that's how I ended up in the Ohio Army National Guard. Went through officer candidate school, was commissioned in '83 into military intelligence, and it was a great place to start.
So as part of the indoctrination program in the Buckeye State, did you have an affinity for any particular college football team back then, or to this day, actually?
Well, you know, we can't mention a certain state that President Trump finished in last night. It's known as the state up north.
Correct. You have that absolutely spot on. Yes. Now, this is where we can agree, right? If he carries the state up north along with Ohio, I think we can all agree that's a good day.
Yeah.
Right.
That is a good day. Absolutely. So, yes.
So, obviously, the indoctrination did work. So,
well, some things stick around. That's right. Lifetime.
There you go. On a much heavier note, though, we've talked about this on our show for weeks and months.
Yeah.
Is cancel culture, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you know firsthand all about cancel culture. Can you walk folks through your experience, just in broad terms, what that was like for you, being someone that's putting their life on the line, serving our country in the role that you were serving?
Well, look, a lot of us sign up just to get things done. I signed up in the Guard very young, became an intelligence officer because I wanted to kind of figure things out. And actually, you might laugh at this, but, you know, I figured I could save more lives than doctors by actually doing good intelligence and preventing death on both sides of letting us win. You know, I'm a Reagan guy. I think we ought to, you know, I don't believe in using war unnecessarily, but we should win. And that attitude is lost today in a lot of our cultures, and President Trump's brought it back. But the idea that you cannot speak the truth or your perception of the truth without consequence is very dangerous. And that's what counterculture is. They try to categorize and otherwise put you in a position where you can't use certain words, that's control, and you can't examine certain concepts because, oh, you're white, you can't look at that. That's not for you. You can't do that. Or cultural appropriation. I'm sorry. Look, I like Chinese food. Are we going to start calling Chinese restaurants Oriental restaurants because we don't want to, draw attention to China? This is all insanity. And one of the things, for those of you who follow me on Twitter, you know, I'm constantly pushing the envelope. I've been suspended a couple times, but I believe that, you know, I have the right to have a very strong opinion about things, whether people agree with it or not. And the left has created this as a tool of control, the progressive left, because let me be very clear, there's folks like Tim Pool, who are the traditional liberals. You know, when I went through college in Dayton, Ohio, Rice State University, some of the best professors I had, and we're still friends to this day, were traditional liberals who believed in free speech, free thought. We didn't agree on economic policy and some of the other things, but we agreed that everybody should have that right to say things. And there's no such thing as hate speech, it's just speech. And that's what's been lost within the context of the current left. This is the current left is very, I'll just say it, Stalinistic. They're very much focused on how they can control thought, control words, and do things to prevent you or me from saying things and being effective. And but by the way, they can say things, you know, like you know, Joe Biden. He says all sorts of racist things all the time. You know, you ain't black. You know, if you vote for Trump, you ain't black. Things like that. You and I say that, we're dead. So it's a double standard. It's not appropriate. And the other thing too, boy, everybody's lost their sense of humor. There's nothing funny anymore. You watch these late night talk, I can't watch it because it's all about slamming Trump and nothing's funny. You can't make. Johnny Carson was great because he would slam everybody, and he was always funny because he would say things which were, you know, funny. But he wouldn't be able to survive the day. You couldn't go on. You couldn't make Blazing Saddles today. Right. No, that was making fun of racism. You know, oh no, you can't do that. So it's very serious. As something we all have to consider. And then again, the Biden Kamala Harris team seem focused on trying to expand this use of counterculture as part of official governance, which is very dangerous.
I did want to bring up a quick point and then go to you, Rob. I wanted your reaction to a story Dan Bongino and Bongino.com have broken over the last 24 hours. The headline reads, Biden campaign won't say if Joe would cooperate with an FBI probe on Hunter if elected. And you outlined earlier brilliantly about the folks that have seen what's going on. What's your reaction to, you know, Joe Biden or the campaign, you know, not committing one way or the other to cooperation with an FBI probe? I thought they had subpoena power and they can compel you. They can compel you.
Well, they would. I mean, they should. So, yeah, look, I know for a fact, you know, one of the things, I don't know if your audience is aware, if you guys are introduced, I do advise the president's reelection campaign. I was asked to join in November of 17. And I've been with them ever since. As a matter of fact, that's why I went up to the Reagan dinner. One of the first tasks they asked me to do is come up to Pennsylvania and talk to you all, which I thought was a great opportunity. The whole, during that time when I joined, the Trump campaign was under investigation, and they were cooperating. They weren't, oh, we're just not going to decide. No, you cooperate, and that's what the right thing is. And I think in this case, the reason that Biden is saying he doesn't know if he's going to cooperate or not because he may have to take the fifth. You know, you don't have to actually provide evidence to the FBI against yourself. And I think that's what we're going to come to find here. And let me be very clear because, you know, again, a lot of this is out there, and I don't know if people have really put all the pieces together. Joe Biden has said on the record he's never received money from a foreign source. That is probably true in that the bank accounts he's received money for whatever reason, weren't foreign banks. But it's very clear at this point that Hunter Biden did receive, via a number of companies he was part of, Seneca and some other things, huge amounts of foreign money from the Ukrainians, a significant amount via Burisma, the $3.5 million payment from the wife of the mayor of Moscow. Still nobody knows what that was about, but nobody says it didn't happen. And then 1.5 billion investment from China. That's a lot of money. And so the question is, where did it all go? And this is where I think forensic accounting is going to be able to figure out a lot of where this all went. And I'm just saying, I'm not making an accusation. I'm saying, based on the way I read, I'm an intelligence officer. I kind of understand how things flow. We're probably going to find that a certain percentage of that went to Joe Biden. Is that legal or not? I don't know. I'm an intelligence officer, not a law enforcement guy. I can't go through and tell you what may have been violated in U.S. Code 18. But I can tell you, if we find out that Biden received money from these deals, you can judge for yourself about, well, what does that mean? But I think that's what they're most afraid of, and that's why they're saying we don't know if we're going to cooperate or not. The answer should have been, no, we're on board. Anything we can do to help. But obviously they didn't say that, and that makes you wonder why.
So as a U.S. intelligence officer, I'm guessing that you would say that the U.S. intelligence service is the most sophisticated and powerful intelligence service in the history of the world. Given that, with all of the gnashing of the teeth and the wailing we've heard about 12 Russian trolls interfering in the election and all these other places, can you tell us how much more significant it would be for our intelligence agencies to be placing their thumb on the scale during an election rather than any foreign power that we could imagine?
You hit the nail on the head. I just received this morning, well, last night actually, from Bud McFarlane. Bud McFarlane is National Security Advisor to President Reagan. Bud is on my board, and he's a friend and mentor. He sent me a report on the President's Science Board looking at counterintelligence. And I glanced at this morning right before we went on. They still don't get it right. They're still not looking at the right place, because so much of the intelligence community is now looking at internal threat. They're not looking at foreign threat. And that's what I want to make my point on. We have developed, as you point out, a very sophisticated, very expensive intelligence system. I've said, if you want to fix intelligence, cut the people in half and cut the budget by about a third. And those people left, you give them the ability to go do it, and give them the mission to go do it, and they'll go do it. They'll go look at foreign threats. Unfortunately, we've seen the compromise of that system by the likes of James Comey and John Brennan, where both of them were allowed, because they lacked supervision from Barack Obama. I think they had encouragement from Barack Obama to take these very powerful intelligence mechanisms. Stefan Halper was an asset. I know how those operations go. You hire these guys who are supposed to go to a foreign country, hang out, go to parties, drink nice drinks with little umbrellas on them, and collect information from foreign sources. He was turned internally against our guys for purposes of finding out what the Trump campaign was doing. John Brennan permitted that. John Brennan had to make sure that that was coordinated and approved with the FBI. The FBI, all the stuff they did relating to the Steele dossier was all turning our foreign counterintelligence on an internal target. That's not permissible. And that did indeed give the other side an amazing insight of what was going on. To be honest with you, I'm amazed that the Trump campaign did as well as it did last time, because it's very clear at this point, right, they were getting all that information about the internals. And it just shows the fact that they were doing, going so hard and so fast, forward. And the other thing is, right after the election and after the inauguration, they continued the collection for purposes of trying to find dirt to do something against them, to find some predicate. And by the way, I've done this as part of counter drug. Some of you may know from my bio, I worked at JADF East down in Key West in the joint task force there doing counter drug. We always had the challenge of being able to collect on bad guys, foreign bad guys, but then we had to come up with some sort of a predicate over here on the law enforcement side to prosecute them, because we didn't want them to know we were, spying on them. So, this is a technique and technology that can be used for good or bad. It's completely ambivalent to the user. The purpose can be to do good interdiction of drug activity, so you can prosecute someone and not know that you use intelligence. It's called parallel construction. It is. I mean, it is. And this is not. I'm not telling anything secret. But that was done here, where they were trying to create some sort of predicate from listening in on the Trump folks, and that was the insurance policy. And so we saw the damage that caused. I would argue that Schiff, Comey, and Brennan did more damage to our country regarding reliability and real confidence in our election system than the Russians ever did, because of the continuous damage for almost 2.5 years they did by pushing this Russian collusion narrative, which they knew was never true. Even to this day, James Comey will not admit that the Russians weren't involved. And Adam Schiff continues to say the Hunter Biden computer is Russian. It's not. So it's dangerous, but these people get committed to it. And the moment you turn our official infrastructure in on ourselves, I'm sorry, that's treason. And I think I would be a lot more severe if I were President Trump in a second term, especially I think the Barr report's going to be very bad regarding some of these folks. And I would encourage prosecution all the way up to the Obama level regarding the misuse of intelligence tools and techniques.
And what I
Clapper
say,
too, right?
Yeah, Clapper too. Yeah.
Clapper
What I
too,
say
right?
what I say real quick is, like, imagine Watergate's the standard for scandals, right?
Yeah.
Imagine if instead of Nixon having a couple bumbling fools at the Watergate Hotel, he would have used the awesome power of the U.S. intelligence agency.
Right.
That's what we're talking about.
Oh yeah. And by the way, Clapper, just let me say this on the record. Clapper is an idiot. Clapper, look, if you go to my Twitter feed, you guys saw, you know where it's at. I have a document there that I posted a couple of years ago. Jim Clapper, when I was a very young intelligence operative working for the Air Force as a civilian, I was promoted to GS-12 by Clapper. I was running some very sophisticated operations for the Air Force. One of them is we used to do something called foreign material acquisition. You know what it's FMA, foreign material. So basically, during the Cold War, we had to buy things without people knowing we were buying them from Russia, because we wanted to be able to fight them in the desert. We wanted to buy their tanks, so we know how that. So I was one of the guys out, undercover as a businessman, buying these things, making it look like it was going to Argentina and stuff. Anyway, so that's what I was doing. I get promoted, back in the day for doing that. When I got promoted, Clapper was an idiot. Clapper was a complete moron, and he was smart in one area: political ambition. Yep. He actually knew very well how to suck up above him. Boy, I could tell you stories about briefings I gave him on Black Ops, and it was like I was talking to a guy who had lost his dog and was couldn't focus on what I was telling him. So,
Carlos.
So how is General Flynn doing?
I spoke with Mike recently. Mike's doing very well. And I know Sydney too. Sydney Powell was one of our senior fellows at the London Center. She's had to move on to do her own thing, but I spoke with Sydney about a month ago. She was here at an event in Northern Virginia where I'm at. Mike is doing very well. Mike, I think, has had the option of being out of this by now. I mean, he did. President Trump was ready to offer him a pardon, whatever it would have taken. Trump was ready to do it. And he didn't, because Sidney Powell said, no, we're going to force the system to work. And God bless him for doing it, because this has been rough on Mike. Mike had to sell his house. And he's been under all sorts of financial stress. I actually did a fundraiser, participated in the fundraiser for him in Texas about 2 years ago. And it's been terrible. And he was victimized both by the system and his previous law firm. I mean, as you guys probably know, I'm suing my old attorney for the same reasons. A guy named Mark Zaid, who turned out to be the attorney for Eric Cucamonga, the whistleblower, the so-called whistleblower. So you can't trust these attorneys, lawyers. So Mike had some very dishonest attorneys who were playing for both sides, more but for the other side, and so they're trying to straighten that out. But Sydney is going to force the system to do the right thing. And I think that's the important thing. And Mike's committed to that. Mike believes that the system needs to be held accountable. And Judge Sullivan has been a huge disappointment. I mean, if you haven't seen judicial activism before, boy, you're seeing it now. And I think when this is all said and done, people are going to look back on the Judge Sullivan thing and say, how did that guy not get figured out to be an Obama operative? And I don't know any other way to put it, but this is highly unusual, and I have a number of friends, and I speak to lawyers on a daily basis. This has just never been done before. But Mike's good. Mike's doing well. I think he's going to come out on top, no matter what happens over the next few months.
Before we go to Todd, have you seen the reportage of Leslie McAdoo Gordon regarding Mike's case?
I have not.
I will text you her Twitter handle.
Cool.
And it is hundreds of tweet threads giving a breakdown of exactly what happened in the en banc and in the cases, and she live tweeted what happened in those hearings. Unbelievable stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just curious with your relationship with General Flynn. Do you see him in a potential second Trump term? And if so, in what capacity? And you know what, fellas? He's already smiling and grinning. So I think I might be onto something again.
Look, there's no secret that there's been discussions of who's going to be doing what in the second term. President Trump is going to have the right to shuffle his cabinet, shuffle the professional appointees. I spoke to an assistant secretary of defense the other day about some of this, and there's very clearly things President Trump wants to do in a second term, and I believe that, to quote my friend Dr. Chris Lehman, John Lehman's brother, personnel is policy. You've got to put the right people in position to do some things. So, and let me say something. I can't answer that question for a couple of different reasons, but I'll give you some hints. One of the things Mike was going to do, and this has been very publicly confirmed, and he said it to Mike. You know, I was on the transition team. I worked for Mike, working to bridge the team with senior members of the Department of Defense at the time. And Mike had been receiving with Vice President Pence some detailed briefings on the intelligence community and DOD. We have black programs, you know, everybody knows they have all these very shadowy things. And so as Mike was being briefed on these things, you know, being read in, being updated in his case, there was one thing that was being left off of all of these briefings. It's like, well, what's the focus? Okay, this is the amount of money, this is the budget, these are all the things that are going on. Why are we doing this? What's the target? What's the gain? What are you focused on? And the briefer couldn't give him any answers. They just could not answer those questions. So Mike has stated very clearly that he planned to do 100% review of all operations, 100%. Like, I'm going to go through everything, and it just scared the bejesus out of people, because these programs become rice bowls, use a term we always use, of big money. These programs cost a lot of money. A lot of them are redundant, and then because they are so sophisticated, and I mean, I can't. Some of these things are amazingly sophisticated, amazingly. If you can't give someone an answer on what it's focused on and what is it producing, there's something wrong. And so Mike was prepared to do that, and it's never been done, by the way. So I think one of the reasons that everybody went against Mike is nobody wanted Mike to kind of peel away the curtain and look at everything that was going on. And Mike was completely committed and completely competent to do that. Rick Grinnell did that a little bit. Rick was there for a while, but even Rick didn't get to the DOD stuff. And Rick and I have spoken about this. So it's very clear that there's some things that Mike is very qualified to do. There's things that Ambassador Rick Grinnell would be qualified to do. There's things I'm qualified to do. The question becomes more about what does the president want to do, and I think that's going to be the big issue going forward.
If, in fact, FBI Director Wray is no longer FBI Director Wray, right, in a second term, there's an individual that was in Congress that left Congress of their own free will and got out to go back into the courtroom because that's where they felt the most comfortable. They've got a decorated career. They ran the Benghazi committee. They ran the Hillary email scandal and committee, in whom, speaking of, is Trey Gowdy.
Right.
He's turned down a federal judgeship to go back into the courtroom. I can think of no better, at least vetting a guy for the head of the FBI, looking at the law enforcement and returning credibility to the FBI. Am I speaking out of school here? Is that somebody that this country could look to as a potential head of the FBI?
Trey would be great.
General, right?
Yeah. No, there's about I think there's about 10 people that would be completely able to do that, and there may or may not be a list going around of who may come in to take Ray's place. And I'm here to tell you that Ray has done some things to discredit his credibility and the credibility of the FBI, which is not going to be easily, Comey was bad. Ray is not quite as bad, but he's not any better. And I think that's going to be one of the things. And Trey Gowdy would be great. Trey has got a great and deep background. I think the problem with the Benghazi committee, if I could be so bold, is he ran into the fact that people on our side knew about it as well. So then they tied his hands on what could be said. It wasn't just about the Democrats. I'm just saying that other folks on our side knew what was going on too. And that's why, even though he, I think, was able to come up with some great conclusions, he was only going to be allowed to go so far on that sort of thing. I mean, I'm speaking from someone who was working. I worked very closely with Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan and the late Walter Jones on some of this stuff back in the day. So it really is like, if you've seen the series House of Cards, it's you would not believe some of the meetings I've been in and the deals cut that the American public doesn't know about. So
unreal.
Well, for me, Benghazi is the most toxic wound to the American soul.
I agree.
In the 2000s.
So look, I'm one of those. I had sources telling me, if you recall, I was on Fox talking about this. This was a gun deal gone bad within the 10 days. Catherine Herridge was confirming that within 14 days, and it was known. It was known that this was no riot gone bad, and it's something that still people, Hillary Clinton and others, need to be held accountable for. I don't believe it should be. It's one of those things, again, I don't think we ought to just like, oh, it's in the past, we should let it go. I don't think we should let it go. So,
Rob?
Yeah, and I think that, see what you think of this. I know we talked about what Trump will do if he wins this re-election as far as what direction he wants to go. Do you share my belief that the only way we will get to the end of this corruption from these people that we see in what we're calling the deep state is if people start to be held criminally accountable?
No doubt. One of the things that a lot of folks tell me is, when are people going to go to jail?
Right.
And I have the same question because, again, I know the standards I was held to during the time I was an active operative. And I'm proud to say, I don't know for better or for worse, I've got a stack of that much documentation on me for my security clearances. I'm just saying, I'm no saint. If you read my book, Operation Dark Heart, I'm very self-effacing. I just lay it all out there. I got in a lot of trouble for giving a female sergeant a full body massage in combat. I'm just saying, they were not happy. They were not happy with some stuff I did. I'm just saying.
I knew I loved you, Tony, but now
so
you are my favorite
just saying.
dude.
I'm no saint, but my little antics were inconveniences, and they were, I'm a guy. What am I going to do?
Right,
but
exactly.
but it's not treason. It's not going against the system. There's a big difference.
Right.
And to the point of where I've been very clear in the fact that we who are operatives who go out and do that hard work are held to a very high standard. We take polygraphs. We have to go through. We have to be accountable. I've been investigated from everything from wiretapping a room during a termination to running operations off the books. And I mean off the books. And I was once called in by the Army senior lawyer, Tom Taylor. Never forget it, back in 95. You came this close to breaking the law, but I didn't. I was going to say, but I didn't. So if you take the standards we are held to and apply it to those who we now know violated the law, they should be in jail. There's just no other way to say it because, I was held to a very high standard of accountability, and that standard should be held equally to them. And I feel very strongly about that. So I don't know what's going to happen with Barr, but I do know from folks I've spoken to inside and outside the government, those who were witnesses in some cases, there's something really wrong with the way the system has been allowed to break itself to become a political tool. And we cannot permit either party, to have the very powerful and expensive tools of national security at their disposal to be able to use against their adversary. And this is why I don't get about the left. I don't know how the left doesn't understand that. No, you don't want this. You don't want us using this. You don't want anybody using this. But that's what we need to do.
So, in closing, tell me what your single most favorite part or the single most thing that you love about President Trump.
He's real. I mean, look, I was up late last night because I'm going to be on TV tonight doing color commentary for a network. And I just wanted to get a sense again of who he is now, 4 years later. And I met him, I met him back when he was, Mr. Trump running his empire. And there's a picture of he and I on Facebook. I was coming off doing something at Fox and he was walking out. A quick story about him, a couple quick stories. He's real. He's walking through the lobby of Fox and he sees Ed Henry and Juan Williams and me talking. We're just standing there kind of talking. And he comes walking by and he sees us talking and he says, hey, to his security, he says, hey, you guys go on. So Trump comes over and just starts talking to us. Hey, how's it going? Just literally just like, hey, how's it going? And we just start talking about, what's going on in the city. That's Trump. He just stops like, hey, and they said, sir, I say, yeah, no, I'll get there. So he just dismissed. And so we sit there and talk for about 15 minutes, just talking. That's Trump. That's my first experience with Trump. So you all may recall during the 2016 cycle, he and Hillary went to the 9/11 museum. There's that picture of her at the Scooby van kind of being pushed into it.
Right.
They were both at the museum that morning. And I got this from a Brit, by the way, a Brit who was one of the curators of the museum. This is inside information. So both of them went to that the 9/11 museum. I highly recommend it. You got to go if you haven't been to it.
Yeah.
And she was there. Miss Clinton was there for about 20 minutes. She looked up some fire truck, had a bad attitude, and left. That's Hillary. So Trump goes in. He's there for 2 hours. He goes and looks at everything. Very conscientious. And at the end of the tour, this is not known. He looks at the curator, the guy that brought him through, and he says, takes out his checkbook, writes a check for $1 million, and says, I am very impressed. I don't want anybody to know this. Here's $1 million. Do what you want. Do what you want with that money. And by the way, this is an anti-Trump Brit who told me this story. So even he said, it's like, look, I'm just telling you, I'm not a big fan of Trump, but this is what he did. So he's real, and he actually invests in those things and those people he believes in. And I get so fed up of hearing about, oh, he's narcissistic, he's this, is that, and the other. It's like, I don't know what you're seeing, but the man I know, he's abrupt. He can be a dick. He can be very direct, but he's not a bad man.
Right.
He's very authentic, and he's not a politician. And I think that's one of the reasons people have a hard time understanding him sometimes, because he's not going to give you that soft language of Joe Biden that means absolutely nothing.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on, and we're 15 minutes away from doing our 24 hours. We have a show on Saturday mornings that I will be reaching out to you and asking you to come on, and hopefully if the president wins, then the judge is going to find for Flynn, correct?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
In pretty short order.
You guys need to get out there in Pennsylvania and get your friends to vote.
Yes.
Just get into the polls.
That's my plan today after a nap.
Yeah.
Look, guys, I'll just say, I spend a lot of time in Ohio, but I love Pennsylvania. I've had some of my best friends. I'm close to the Lehman family. Kurt Weldon, my friend Kurt Weldon down in, Congressman Weldon. I love the War College. I love the trains. I'm a big train guy. So yeah. I mentioned this during my talk up in Scranton, when I was up with you guys.
Yeah. Wilkes-Barre, yeah.
Wilkes-Barre, yeah. So I love trains, and it's a big state for that. But you guys need to get out the vote so Pennsylvania does the right thing for Pennsylvania.
Absolutely.
No question about it. Make no mistake, Pennsylvania will decide this election.
That's right.
Thank you, Tony. I
Thanks,
really
guys.
appreciate it.
Great questions. Thanks for having me. It was actually fun for early in the morning. So.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Sure, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Oh, man. What a way to end it, right?
Robert, your thoughts. Your thoughts overall.
Okay, well, first let me say I probably could have talked to him for 24 more hours about Russia collusion, and that's kind of my wheelhouse, like this Burisma story and stuff like that. So yeah, I thought that was a fantastic,
especially off the air.
Right.
Dude, trust me, there's a reason why I asked him to come on. Right. Okay, he lit us up.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I thought the show was amazing. I mean, my big takeaways was just how many amazing people that we were able to speak to and that are out there doing the right thing. You know, not just making sure everyone's rights are protected and that everyone can vote regardless of their party, but out there pushing for what's best for our state, what's best for our country, and doing what they can to see Trump get elected. And, you know, I personally feel better. You know, you never know. You never know what's going to happen with an election, but to hear, you know, just person in county after county after county talk about the enthusiasm, talk about the things they're seeing on the ground, it makes me optimistic for today.
Todd, your thoughts?
Over the past 24 hours, it has been quite heartening to see and to talk to so many Buckeye fans here in the Commonwealth. I must be honest with you. Just to see how many of those people are really out there. And I gotta ask Lieutenant Colonel who he's picking in the Army-Navy game. I mean, Army's 6-1 right now. Navy's 3-4. I have a sneaking suspicion he's picking Army to beat Navy.
Yeah, no question about it.
What I've relished about the last 24 hours is the authenticity of our guests.
Right.
Their willingness to be open with our audience, with us, with questions across the spectrum. Not just on President Trump, but across the spectrum, what their experience has been, how they got to today, their life experience, right? It's just been very eye-opening. And then the reactions in real time to some actual stories going on that are impacting this election cycle. Just been unbelievable.
So the very first thing I want to tell everybody that's watching us, and to share this with your friends, especially also on YouTube, I want to make sure that the people that are on YouTube that have been following us for 24 hours, thank you very much for supporting us, for supporting Rob. If you live in Pennsylvania, there is no more straight ticket voting. You have to vote the entire ballot. There's no more straight ticket voting, Republican or Democrat. Vote the entire ballot. The lesson that we've learned from COVID is that the reason why the governor was able to get away with so much is because we never paid attention in the odd years. We never paid attention in the state races on years that weren't the presidential years. And we have a disparity in the courts, 5-2. So when you have the courts and the Supreme Court and you have the governor's office, hey, that's a recipe for disaster. So vote the entire ticket. Vote your conscience. Vote the entire ticket. Vote. Invite your friends. Help your friends. Whatever you need to do to get these people out there. Babysit a dog or whatever you got to do, you should do that. The other thing I want to let you know is that we will decide the election, and whatever happens, this is the United States of America, and I refuse to believe that tomorrow will not be another day. I believe it will be another day, and it will be another great day to be alive in America. Robert.
Yeah, so I have people calling for a grand finale. We'll see what we got in us for the final 10 minutes of a 24-hour stream. I mean, to me, it's easy. We've had guest after guest tell us. It's cliche. It's the most important election of our lifetime. They say it every year. I think that everyone would agree on both sides of the aisle that that's true this time. This is a fundamental choice between whether or not you love this country or you want to see this country destroyed. It is that simple. It is not hyperbolic. If Joe Biden and Kamala Harris win, this will become a globalist Marxist society. The corruption and the coup that was engaged against Donald Trump will go unpunished. It will continue. The radical nature that's been seen leading up to this election of endorsing lockdowns and taking away people's rights selectively, endorsing riots, forcing people into nursing homes with COVID, threatening to pack the courts, all of this stuff. If the Democrats win this election, they will take as a sign, this is how we operate our politics going forward. This will be the beginning of a nightmare that will last not just through our lifetimes, but our children's lifetimes. Once you give total power, I mean, think about this. If they pack the court, if they win the House and Senate and the presidency and pack the court, then they grant amnesty to dozens of millions of illegals. Then they create new states. They are changing the game so that they can never lose. And once they have that power guaranteed, that is when they will really come against the people they perceive as enemies. We see how they're coming for your First Amendment right, and they're working with oligarchs in a real fascist way. Tech companies, media companies to censor you so you no longer have free speech. We see how not only are they going after your free speech so you can't speak, but they're working with academia and working even when we're children in these schools to shame us into censoring our own speech. They're taking away our Second Amendment so we don't have the right to defend ourselves. They encourage the mob to come after you. They say the cops shouldn't be there to protect you, and then they criminalize you for protecting yourself. All the while they celebrate as peaceful those that are engaged in the violence against you. It's Orwell's 1984 manifested. The truth is a lie. War is peace. The same party that claims that they're the party of peace, that they're the party that is morally superior and the other party is xenophobic, they can't wait to rush you into more foreign regime change wars. They think you're a horrible person if you think that we should bring our good troops back home. That's what this party represents. Everything that America stands for. And I know, Carlos, you've seen my promo video that I have for my show. Talks about the reason the United States is the greatest country in the history of the world is that it was focused on the individual. The Democratic Party is anathema to everything the Founding Fathers stood for. They don't want you to be an individual. They want you to be a group based on your religion, based on your ethnicity, based on your gender, based on your sexual preference. Joe Biden said it best. You're not really black if you don't vote for me. This wasn't a slip up. That's how they really think. This is what they want. They don't want you to be an individual. They want you totally reliant on the government. They want to take away your right to worship. They don't want you having a higher power than the government. And as we heard from General Spalding, just like with the Chinese government, the deal that the Communist government of China gives their people is just give us total control over your life, the ability to take away all of your rights, and we'll guarantee you food and security. You'll have a job. That is the message of the Democratic Party. They are telling people that if you just rely on us, if you just worship us, we'll give you bread and circuses. If we don't vote for Donald Trump and the Republican Party in this election, this will become entrenched. The middle class will suffer. We'll have more lockdowns. We'll see the end of our fossil fuel and energy sector. We'll see our rivals like China, Russia, Iran, and the Middle East. All of a sudden, they'll become far more powerful. They're not going to switch from their fossil fuels. They'll continue to take advantage of that competition in the market and get incredibly wealthy and thereby get incredible amounts of power. While Americans, particularly the poorest Americans, struggle without being able to have that fossil fuel energy economy. In Pennsylvania, not only do you need cheap gas for every product that's shipped or every time you drive somewhere, but our economy is tied intricately to the fossil fuel economy. That will be eliminated. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but they're going to phase it out. Do you think the same people that called you 10-toothed rubes, do you think the same people that said you cling to your guns and Bibles and that you're racist or you're a Nazi or you're a Russian stooge, once they take your job away, as they admit they're going to do you think they're going to be there to say, oh, but we'll train you for the new economy? Do you think they care about you? You could be easily replaced by an illegal immigrant that they could just grant amnesty to. This is the fundamental destruction of our country because they hate our country. Not every Democrat. We should be reaching out to those that are reasonable, that love this country, and there are many of them. But the people running this Democratic Party, a Biden-Kamala Harris ticket, they can't wait to endorse the ideas of the 1619 Project and critical race theory that just talks about how horrible this country is. It was never great, Joe Biden says. That's what they truly believe. Our country cannot survive leaders that don't love this country. Donald Trump might not have a personality that everyone likes. Some of us like it more than others because we appreciate that we finally have a fighter. Make no mistake about it. The things that might grate on you with Donald Trump's personality make him who he is. And a 1 in a million individual, if not more, that was able to stand up to having his life totally ruined by every institution in this country that attacks him 24/7. Attacks him, attacks his wife, attacks his kid, attacks his children. Through legal investigations, through media smears, through people that were formerly his friends coming out just to make a buck and sell books, smearing him. He didn't have to do this. He was a billionaire. He could have just enjoyed his, sunset years. But instead, he's out there 5 rallies a day, sticking up for the American worker. If he wins, it'll be the biggest underdog story since the last win, except this one's even bigger. Donald Trump represents everything that is great with this country. He's willing to fight. He's willing to do what's right. And he understands that the individual, and particularly the working class of this country, is the backbone of not just what makes this country great, but why every single one of our allies is able to achieve the successes that they have, based on the back of the American worker. And we've been sold out for 40 years. Donald Trump single-handedly tried to reverse that. He talked about things like immigration. He talked about these unfair trade deals. Regardless of what you think of him, the combination of him fighting for you and the lockdown, globalist, Marxist Democrats that want to control every area of your life, the choice is clear. Every single one of us need to get out there in Pennsylvania and all across the country and vote for Donald Trump and every Republican running, so we could make this country great again and finally hold accountable the extremists that hate this country and seek to destroy it. That's it. That's what I got. That's a 24-hour rant there.
So I guess my thoughts are that us three have left everything we got on the battlefield. If we can do 24 hours, you can do anything. You can do anything. And again, there's so many people, I'm looking at the, rational wrong think and harmony and we got Dan from the Netherlands and like, part of the reason why we did it is because of you guys, Dylan and Tiberius and, you guys and, we're all we have. We have this little group, we have this little thing, and we're just all trying to do our best to move forward in the greatest country that we know. And, I'm grateful. I'm going to go to bed here in a couple of minutes, and I'm going to say my prayers, and I'm going to pray for all of you guys. I'm going to pray for the president. I am, since the movie came out, I don't know if you guys saw War Room, W-A-R, Room, R-O-O-M. My parents died within 2 years of each other, and then 2 years of the movie. And I used to pray pretty solidly, but after War Room, I became fanatical about prayer. So every morning and every night. And so I will be praying for all you guys. And I am very thankful for you guys supporting us and supporting Rob. And, but especially, I want to thank the President of the United States. And I want to thank my friend, Robert Knorr, and my friend, Todd Bartley.
Hey, Todd?
Guys, I want to tell you, the biggest indicator for this year's election was seeing someone in my social media feed late summer, and they hashtagged Settle for Joe. I thought it was the single most telling hashtag in this election cycle because this reason. This country doesn't settle. We lead. It's why we're called the greatest country on the planet. It's why we have folks trying to immigrate here by the millions. Everybody wants to come to America for the opportunities that are here, for the freedoms that are here, that are trying to be stripped away and chipped away at on a daily basis. I firmly believe that Americans see this for what it is, and they're not about to let the greatest country in the world go off a cliff legally. And you see the stories like I posted yesterday and will be posting later today, why their extraordinary efforts are being undertaken across this country to not inform the general public of an ability to vote when you're under COVID-19 quarantine. And at the last minute, you have all of these county election officials, county commissioners, sheriff's departments going door to door to make sure somebody has the ability to vote. And we're not even saying they're voting for President Trump. They may be casting a ballot for Joe Biden. But guess what? The integrity of the election is paramount. I think it speaks volumes to where we are as a country and how important this election is. On a personal note, my son gets to cast a ballot today for the first time in his life. I get to go with him to the polling place. Once he crosses the threshold and goes and signs his name in the voter registration book that he's casting a ballot today, the decision's up to him. He's become very well informed. I would argue he's one of the most informed young people in this election cycle. He digests everything he can find. He's watching projections. I couldn't be more proud of my son. And he's casting a ballot in his first election for who he believes in his heart and his mind can take the country forward. I can't. How can I be disappointed in my son? He's casting a ballot, folks. He's come to his own conclusion.
His first one.
His first one. His first one. His first election ever that he gets cast ballot in is the most consequential election in my lifetime and arguably in his young lifetime. I couldn't be more proud of my son. So on a personal note, we'll be going to the polling place here later today and going through that experience together for the first time as father and son. And guys, he watched a lot of the show. He was up with you in the overnight hours, I can tell you.
If he wants an autograph, just...
We know a guy, right?
Yeah.
We know a guy.
For the both of you to coordinate and the guest list and the technical stuff, and the audience for sticking with us for the better part of 24 hours and even beyond. Go vote today. Go exercise that constitutional right and show the world what your vote means, not only to you, but to your neighbors, to your community, to the entire country, because every vote is going to matter more so than ever in this election cycle.
Rob, I love you. Rational, wrong think. I'm going to vote in the morning for me, and then in the afternoon, I'm going to go back and vote for you.
Mm-hmm.
And Todd Bartley, tsunami.
Tsunami.
And I just want to say thank you to both of you, just so everyone knows. I only knew like one or two people that we interviewed. So these two are fantastic with the production and getting everyone in. Carlos, I got to say, man, the full 24. I thought for sure, there'd be a 3-4 hour stretch in the middle of the night. I'd be by myself, but you guys did it. You stuck it out the whole time, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate every guest we had, everyone that watched. There's nothing more to say. We went over the 24 hours. We're now minutes past the 24 hours. So Thank everyone so much. I really appreciate it. And if this is content that you find worthwhile, we're going to be here regardless of the outcome of this election. We're going to be fighting for this country. We're going to be fighting for the principles that made this country great. Todd's going to be continuing to be one of the greatest journalists in the state, breaking these stories. We're not going anywhere. This is just the beginning, but this is a huge step in the direction our country starts to turn. And so everybody get out there and vote. And we can't wait to see you all back here again soon.
Guys, just as a heads up, Wendy Bell, 11 o'clock today, in between your naps. If you want to catch her, I'll be on the A block with Wendy Bell. She's got an amazing monologue ready to go. There's a couple of stories brewing here this morning that'll be coming out over the next hour or two. Secretary Bookbar is scheduled for a 10:30 press conference, so buckle up and go vote.
My best wishes to your son.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Take it easy.
I will talk to you later. Good night, and thank you, YouTube and Rob's followers. I'm out.
24 hours, baby. We did it. So
That's
see
right.
ya.